we're gonna get started, and I'm going to begin by convening the meeting of the Finance Committee. So I'm going to ask our esteemed clerk, Carlin, to call the roll for the Finance Committee to confirm that we have a quorum.
Thank you. This is the roll call. Suresh Bhatia. Peggy Briggs. Brian Conway. Brian, are you online? I see you online, but you're not unmuted yet at the moment. Okay, Brian's online. Kathy Kukalo. Eric Dahlberg. John Garofalo.
Here.
Pat Geyer. Pat, I see you online. Are you there?
Pat Geyer's here.
Okay, I hear you, Pat. Thank you. Gerard Jansen.
Here.
Don Kupka.
Here.
Lindsay Liss.
Here.
Carlin Reed. Here. Paul Rodriguez.
Here.
Kazi Sadruzaman. Shri Tupel. Lois Wassoff.
Here.
We have a quorum.
And I think we're going to have a couple of other members joining us online. Thank you. I am now going to open the public meeting. So I'm going to ask the clerk to call a roll and ask the Finance Committee members to open the public meeting.
Good. We need a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
That was Don. And a second? Don, the second was Gerard.
Gerard.
Okay. All right, this is to open the public hearing. We're doing a roll call for that. So, Brian Conway.
Yes.
Thank you. John Garofalo.
Yes.
Pat Geyer.
Yes.
Gerard Jansen.
Yes.
Don Kupka.
Yes.
Lindsay Liss.
Yes.
Carlin Reed, yes. Paul Rodriguez.
Yes.
Shri Tupel. Lois Wassoff.
Yes.
All right, Gerard, I have a count of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 yeses, 0 noes, 0 abstentions. Does that match your count?
Agreed.
Thank you. Motion passes. Hearing is open.
So I'm going to make a very brief statement, and then we're going to get right to it. My name is Lois Wassoff, and I am chair of the Finance Committee, and I want to thank all of you for joining the public hearing tonight. Tonight is the third and the last of the public hearings held by the Finance Committee on the warrant articles that may or will have a financial impact on the town. Holding these hearings is one of the most important tasks of the committee. These hearings give the town's citizens an opportunity to learn more about those warrant articles and to ask questions of the sponsors. The presentations and the questions asked by committee members and by citizens attending the meeting are critically important in helping the Finance Committee perform another of its obligations. Each year, the Finance Committee votes on recommendations that it will make to town meeting on each of the warrant articles. Those recommendations are included in the Finance Committee report that will be distributed in advance of town meeting. Your presence here tonight is very much appreciated. Your participation in the hearing process is an important part of our annual town meeting process. Each article being presented tonight will have an impact on life in Concord for our residents, businesses, town employees, and town visitors. By the end of the hearing tonight, we will have reviewed 33 of the 50 articles on the annual town meeting warrant. At our first hearing last Thursday, we heard from the town, Concord Public Schools, Concord Carlisle Regional School District, and Minuteman Regional Tech on their proposed FY27 operating and capital budgets. On Tuesday, we heard from the Community Preservation Committee, and we heard about other articles having financial implications, including, among others, the establishment of stabilization funds. Tonight, we'll hear from the town's enterprise funds, including the Beatty Swim and Fitness Center, the light plant, water and sewer, and the PEG Access and Cable-related fund, the town's media division. As with all public events, we expect a civil dialogue. We ask that all speakers keep their presentations brief, 5 or 10 minutes at most. Public comment will be limited only to the article or issue being discussed. All public comments must be made through the chair. Individuals who speak out of order, disrupt the meeting, or interfere with others who are speaking will be removed. Questions are encouraged. However, please keep in mind that presenters may not be able to answer all questions this evening. Be assured that your questions and input will be considered as the presenters develop final presentations for annual town meeting. Copies of all public hearing presentation materials and the agenda for each Finance Committee public hearing is included in the Finance Committee packet and will be posted and available on the town website and at the annual town meeting section of the town's website. These public hearings are being recorded on Zoom and will be accessible on Minutemen Media Network's YouTube channel. After each presentation, the Finance Committee members will have an opportunity to ask questions. Then I will open the floor to members of the public. Members of the public should try to limit their questions to 1 minute. If you are in the public hearing room, please stand up and line up at the microphone. If you are on Zoom, please select the raise hand function. And remember to identify yourself and give your address at the beginning of your comment or question. After the Finance Committee closes each public hearing, the committee will meet immediately after in regular session. Our intention is to discuss and possibly vote on recommendations for each warrant article heard during the public hearing. As always, our regular Finance Committee meetings are open to the public, and we invite you to stay and keep us company. Some other calendar reminders. Don't forget that the annual town election is on March 31. Annual town meeting will be on Monday, April 27th at 6:30 p.m. at Concord Carlisle High School, with subsequent days to follow. Thank you all, and now I'm going to turn the meeting over to our first presenter, who I think is Jason from the Light Plant.
Good evening. I'm Jason Bulger, Director of the Light Plant. I'm going to talk about Article number 40. This is the motion, and basically the motion is here to authorize the town manager to expend the capital that is in the fund balance, as well as any revenues earned in that year, and then also to authorize a pilot in the amount of $453,500 to be transferred to the town. I'm going to go through a lot of metrics here. I'm going to try to keep this very high level. If anybody has questions, obviously you can ask afterward. Here you're going to see our annual megawatt hour sales. We do things a little bit differently at the Light Plant because we are mandated by the Department of Public Utilities to operate on a calendar fiscal year for our reporting. So the figures you're going to see here in the presentation are calendar 2026 data for the most part, and obviously previous years. What you'll notice here is a general trend that in the last few years we've seen an increase in the megawatt hour sales. And that is because after many years of declining sales due to energy efficiency programs, we're seeing an increase due to the beneficial electrification that's happening in town. These are the EVs, the heat pumps, the things that the Light Plant is supporting through rebates and offers. Next, you're going to see the net income. Keep in mind that the net income is capped at 8% by the Department of Public Utilities, and it is a function of the rate base times our rate of return. That's what the net income is. You'll see here that it's slightly elevated over the previous year, forecasted to be slightly elevated. The one thing that I'll say is that, as you'll see in a few slides, power supply is our greatest cost by far. And there are fluctuations in our power supply, as we do pre-purchase about 80 to 90% of our power, but some of it is bought on the spot market in real time. And as you can imagine, there are world events that can impact the cost of power and do change the projections that we have. So looking at electricity sales here, you'll see that they're projected to be higher in 2026, mainly in residential and commercial. You'll also see a decrease in the REC charge. That's the renewable energy credit charge that we put on customer accounts. The reason for that reduction is that we actually need to buy fewer renewable energy credits this year because we have more non-emitting power sources this year. So we purchase an amount of RECs that offsets the emitting power that we use in town. When you see the power categories, let me get to the right slide here. There's actual different components that make up our power costs. The biggest, the light green on the left there, is the actual energy itself. This is the cost to generate a kilowatt hour, megawatt hour of energy. The blue cost that you'll see is kind of shrinking over time is the capacity charge. That is the regional operator's cost to provide enough electricity at a peak moment for all the users in the greater New England area. So then the next line, the yellow line, that's the transmission cost. That's the cost it takes for power to get from the generator to Concord. And you'll see that that's increasing and has been increasing a lot as all of the electrification that's happening and as energy sources are diversified, it costs more money to build and maintain transmission systems to get that power to places. And then you'll see that the other two are fixed and other and RECs. And as I mentioned, the RECs are a little bit bigger. Fixed and other, those are ancillary costs that the ISO charges as well as contract costs. And then also we pay fixed charges just to participate in the ISO New England. On the next slide, we see power generation categories. So this is like 100%, you know, and how it's broken down by source. You'll see that there's grid mix, there's fossil fuels, hydro, landfill, solar, wind, and nuclear on here. This slide actually only shows 2025, but I can tell you the 2026 numbers are very similar. There is no fossil, there is no landfill in the mix in 25 or 26. And the only real difference between 25 and 26 is that our hydro went up, and it went up to 26% from 19.7, as you see on the chart here. So in general, you can see less of a reliance on that grid mix. And the grid mix can be a lot of things. It's really what's coming out of the line at any given time. It can be natural gas, it can be solar, it can be other things, but it's kind of a blend of all those things. And then the others, the dedicated bars, represent what we actually have contracts for. In terms of operating costs, you'll see here purchase power is the largest group by far. We're anticipating that to go down. Again, that's highly dependent on what we pay for that 10 to 20% that we have unhedged. In operations, that's a little bit higher, and that's attributed to overhead underground maintenance, projected personnel costs. We have 2 bargaining units now at the light plant. Tree trimming that's happening. We did a lot of tree trimming last year, right before the 250th. And we think that it's one of the reasons why through that last blizzard we had very few incidents here in Concord despite the winds and heavy snow. And then you'll see here, just in general, those other breakdowns are, the blue is operations maintenance, as I said, the yellow is depreciation costs, and then debt service, which is anticipated to be very low depending on when and how much we borrow for the various projects that we have coming up, like the middle school solar. I promised Ryan I would say next slide, so next slide, please. So on this slide, we see the capital outlay expected in comparison. I will say some of this, the 10 million that you'll see here on this slide, was projected to be spent in 2025, but was not able to, so it was moved forward a little bit, and some of that cost includes our SCADA system upgrade that we're doing. This is for real-time data of the energy that's coming in and going out on various feeders here in Concord. And as we expand that system, it will go to more and more devices like reclosers and switches and allow us to have more real-time management over the system. It will also assist as we try to restore power and isolate certain areas. That's always a challenge when a large group of people go out. You ideally want to find the fault and then isolate it so that a smaller number of people are out. And having that visibility with a real-time system will help us in our response time, as well as give us information about equipment that might be failing in the near future. We also have some capital costs set aside for HVAC repairs at really 3 buildings, as well as some roof work. And the borrowing you see here is expected for the middle school solar that we're hoping to get going this year. And the underground fund, it's a smaller amount this year. We are planning a bigger undergrounding project next year. Previous years, we've been working on the Cambridge Turnpike extension. We actually found some of that conduit that was installed has collapsed. It's not a huge amount, but we're going to have to clear that out before we can do that this year. And we're also going to prepare and figure out and prioritize the next areas of undergrounding. The underground fund is a dedicated a reserve fund that can only be used for the purpose of undergrounding new areas of town, and it's funded by a separate surcharge on electric bills. This here, you'll see the gross margin. As I mentioned, the DPU has a mandated rate of return, and the expected expense and revenue net income are seen here, highly dependent upon, obviously, real expenses and revenues. We're a couple months in. We close our financial system about 70 to 80 days after the month end, so we're about closing December, so we have a better picture of 2025, but it's still kind of preliminary on 2026, so the numbers aren't tweaked much from the forecast that the Light Board approved. So that ends the electric section. This just is the closing slide that reiterates the pilot number. And I'll mention that the pilot is based on a formula that's a function of kilowatt hour sales multiplied by $2,750 per million kilowatt hour sales. And this was a formula agreed upon by the town manager a few years ago. And so we just update that based on our audited financial kilowatt hour sales for each year. So this is based on the kilowatt hour sales in 2024 because those are the latest audited financials that we have. Lois, would you like me to pause after electric or get through broadband and then pause for questions?
Do we have questions now? Don, would you like to ask a question?
I do, yeah.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Jason. A few questions for you. Did I hear you correctly at the beginning? You said that the profit is limited to 8%?
The rate of return is limited to 8%.
The rate of return, not the profit margin?
Correct.
Because the profit margin is about 18%.
Right, the rate of return.
And the profit goes into retained earnings, is that right?
Yes.
And what are our retained earnings and what is the max allowable retained earnings level for CMLP?
Oh, geez, is there a slide on that? I know I just prepared it for the budget book. I can look that up. I don't know if Nan's online, but it'll be in the budget book, or the fund balance. I can get it for you in a few minutes.
Thanks. Well, I was dialed in when your consultant earlier this year was talking about the subject, and he said that we're very near that maximum allowable retained earnings figure. And then I thought that would have been good to know when we were talking about whether to borrow for the middle school project or not.
Right.
So the question then is, why borrow when we're nearing the ceiling of the savings that we're per law?
Yeah, so we're not quite nearing it now. We were going to near it in a few years. I think that money is not just money sitting around doing nothing. It's money that needs to be reinvested in the infrastructure in Concord. So that rate of return that's planned is meant to replace equipment, and we certainly have a lot that needs to be replaced. That underground fund, as I mentioned, can only be used for undergrounding new areas. And so when we have underground failures, like we had at Walden and Maine, all of that comes out of our regular fund balance, not out of a reserve fund. So we do need to invest in the infrastructure and not necessarily just use that for other projects that could be borrowed for. But I will say that for example, the advanced metering system was about a $3 million borrowing authorization that we sought, and we didn't end up borrowing for that for exactly this reason. When we looked at how it was going to be spent over time and when it was going to hit, we ended up not needing to borrow for that project because it wasn't like a lump sum that hit at this moment that we needed to pay for.
Yeah.
And so we obviously can do that sometimes, and we do.
Okay, good. I want to be clear, I'm not complaining that
Yeah.
you're well-funded. I think it's
Right.
a wonderful problem to have. I think it's good to, so then also, just to confirm, the depreciation charge that we see, or the depreciation, that is on top of the retained earnings, is that right?
Right, so we're
Yeah.
trying to fund depreciation to pay for things that we know
Right.
fail, and the rate of return is meant to bridge the gap between the cost of something when we bought it versus when we have to replace it.
Yep.
We depreciate everything at 3.33% every year, which is a DPU requirement, and obviously that doesn't always line up with some infrastructure that doesn't necessarily last 33 years, so.
Right. So I think, I don't want to speak for Carlin, but for the FinCom report, it'd be really nice to have that snapshot to give to the citizens of the financial position, of
Yeah.
how big the funds are, et cetera. And then lastly, the pilot, when I was going to ask you how it is calculated, you gave us the answer, and it feels rather random or arbitrary rather than related to, and it's much larger than the other enterprise funds. So two questions. One is that the total funds that are remitted back to the town, or you're shaking your head no? So, okay, that answers that question. And you can address that next. But then also, the pilot has it been growing to get to this level? It's quite high.
Yeah, so as you probably saw in one of my first two slides, the kilowatt hour sales or megawatt hour sales that we sell each year. So the last 3 years that's been going up, and so the pilot will be going up.
Yep.
When that was going down, the pilot was going down a little bit.
Yep.
And so, but you asked the question, is that the total amount? So the light plant does contribute indirect costs,
Yeah.
and that's a formula, and the town has been going through a process to update that formula for fiscal '27. So there's indirect costs that we pay for HR and IT and all the other town services that the light plant uses. The pilot is completely separate from that. And then we also pay, obviously, our fair share of OPEB and pension costs for the employees that we have, and that's done on the actuarial basis.
Right, okay. I think also for FinCom report, to know that total that is going out of the light plant into the town's budget would be
Okay.
wonderful. Thanks.
I think we have other questions, if that's okay.
Could I just make a comment? It's not going into the town's budget, it is supporting overall town spending. So,
Oh, yeah, right, into the town's coffers, I guess I mean, sorry. Yeah.
And Carlin, you had a question?
No, I don't. There's one on the line, but it's an
Okay.
online question.
So let's go, let's let Lindsay ask her question, and then we'll go online.
Just had one question about the rising transmission costs.
Yes.
Is there any way to mitigate that in the long term, and do we think that those will continue to rise?
Yes, there's lots of ways I could talk about. So obviously, in-town generation doesn't incur transmission costs. In-town generation is also, solar at this point and intermittent, and requires energy storage to be kind of a long-term 24/7 resource. So that's one way. There are other ways that an MLP like Concord could participate more in transmission. So for example, many years ago or even decades ago, we bought into a transmission project that delivers power from hydro resources in Canada and brings them into the United States. And so as a result of that, we make money on that. When people pay transmission charges, we get money back on that, or save money basically on our transmission costs. So there are things you can do like that. And there are other entities like MWEC and Energy New England that are trying to move in the area of transmission. And then I'll say the biggest way that we know of is that Eversource recently contacted CMLP about potentially expanding the substation, not necessarily the footprint, but just expanding the feeders brought into the substation at 219 on Forest Ridge Road. And what that would do is right now we only have one connection to Maynard. We're kind of at the end of a series of substations. This would bring in another source of power and would also allow Concord's substation to participate in transmission. And what that would mean is that substation costs would now be borne by those funds that everybody pays for transmission instead of municipal light plant customers. So projects like that, but those are 5 to 10 year projects, right? So we're trying to make decisions that put us in a good place regarding that. And I think also the other thing I'll say is just energy storage is another huge way of doing that, because when you can dispatch a battery during those transmission peaks, which are monthly, you can save dramatically on transmission costs.
Okay, so you're looking into all of those things?
Yes, and we are pursuing a battery right now, trying to get a battery sited at the landfill, and that would participate in transmission capacity peaks.
Is there anyone else from the Finance Committee who has questions about this portion of the presentation?
We have two people online.
Finance Committee?
But they don't have their hands up at this point.
So no one from the Finance Committee online has any questions? No? Okay.
The non-person online.
All right, let's take one question from online and then move on.
Linda asked me.
Online, we cannot hear the speakers.
Oh, Linda, okay, thank you. Jason, come in close to the mic.
Oh, is it that you can't hear me at all, Linda, or is it just not loud?
I can barely hear you.
If I get closer, does it sound louder?
Yes, but I couldn't hear the speakers at the table either.
Oh,
Okay, thank you.
We'll get a lot closer as well.
so I'm not alone.
All right, so we can come back to this if there are additional questions, but let's move on to the telecommunications portion of the presentation.
Okay, do I need to do something to share my screen, or is that? Okay. All right, so as hopefully most people know, Concord Municipal Light Plant does also offer broadband to both residential and commercial customers here in Concord, and has been operating for over a decade now. Today, we offer speeds up to a gig, and pretty soon we'll be offering speeds well over that, 5 or even 10 gig. As of December 25th, we had 1,848 active customers, with only about 162 of those being commercial. The vast majority are residential. There is a low-income discount available for people who qualify for the rate assistance, and you can visit us at concordma.gov/broadband. Last plug, I promise. In terms of growth, we're seeing about 3.8% growth in active subscriptions in 2025, and that annual revenue was $1.91 million and then the net income was $632,000. On this slide, you'll see the revenue sources. The vast majority are residential customers that we have, and then you'll see commercial. There's a very slight sliver of yellow for municipal customers, and then the other is primarily things like dark fiber leases that we have. So we may have a customer in Concord who has a company and they need to get their private internet to somewhere to Boston, and we have fiber in that area, so they can actually lease that fiber from us and use it. And so these are revenues like that, and or when we might do jobs outside of the normal internet business that we do. So if our technicians need to do work that's not covered by the installation charges for customers. Here you'll see just the trend line of the customer count rising pretty steadily. There was obviously a pretty big ramp up in the early years as we had a large backlog of customers, and we also had a lot of people who were easy to take. Now we are dealing with the folks who are harder to hook up, and they are harder because they may have underground power, but their underground power was put in at a time before broadband existed. So there is no conduit for that broadband to get to their house. So we have to get creative, and there's all sorts of other challenges as to why it's a lot harder to install new customers today. The other thing that I'll talk about just about what our plans are. So right now, as I mentioned, the speeds are limited to a gig. However, with the upgrade to XGS-PON technology, we'll be able to offer much faster speeds and also increase the number of customers that we serve on a single strand of fiber, which is important because that will lower our ongoing capital costs. If we ever reach kind of a saturation point, this new technology will make that happen a lot further in the future than it would have otherwise happened. And we're also upgrading our equipment to everything being 100 gig. At our peak now, we're somewhere between 7 and 8 gigabits per second. We are expecting with a lot of new fast enterprise customers that that's going to go a lot higher. And all of our equipment is kind of set up for 10 or 20 gig. And this will mean everything can go all the way up to 100 gig. And then we're also looking at expanding fiber into underserved areas like multi-dwelling units in areas of town that, as I mentioned, might have previously been undergrounded for power but don't have the conduit necessary. Here you'll see the net income or loss. The real reason for it going down in 2026 is for that really large upgrade that I was just talking about. This is something that we do once every decade, this equipment that we're replacing. And I'd say it was on the order of about $350,000 that we needed to do. If that hadn't been in 2026, that red line would have continued up in its current trend. I think that we are expecting that we'll see more commercial growth after our upgrade because a lot of commercial folks and even folks like the schools need speeds faster than 1 gig, and that's what we could offer today. But now we'll be able to really compete with Verizon, Comcast, and others. I know we don't have Fios in town, but Verizon actually does have Fios or fiber to a limited number of commercial customers. And that's the end of Article 40. So this just summarizes everything. Again, the broadband is a part of the light plant, so that's why the end slide's here. So happy to take any questions that the Finance Committee has.
So let's start. Any further questions from the Finance Committee? Don, did you have any additional questions? Okay. Gerard?
Yeah. We can go back to your We can go to your financial results. You've got a revenue of 1.9 million and net income of 600,000. It's like 30-odd%. That's pretty healthy. How did you come up with that?
Sorry, I'm getting to the slide. So if, let me see if I can, I don't know if we can pull up the slides again. I can go back to,
Useful to see the slide.
there we go. Sorry, I need my reading
It was an
glasses.
earlier slide.
513.
No, I know. I was just trying to check that number against the other.
There.
Yeah, you're going off of this one. That was 2025. I don't know if Nan, our financial manager's online, if just to confirm that net income of 632,000. Ryan, do you see her?
Yes.
Just give me 1 second. We'll promote Nan. She has more spreadsheets open than I do. Nan, can you hear us? Nan, we're just asking about the net income of $632,000 for estimated for '25. I don't know if you can comment on that number.
I'm looking at the forecast file right now. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm showing more of a $400,000 net income from our operating forecast file. I'll have to look at the chart to see where that data came from.
Okay, so maybe closer to 400,000.
It's still pretty healthy. I mean, how did you, I mean, your previous one, you were limited in your, what your net income can be as percent of revenue. Is there any control in this one? I mean,
The DPU mandates the rate of return for the entire plant, so it's
Okay.
everything lumped together. So there isn't a particular rate of return, but that money is used to pay back the loan. The light plant actually loaned broadband business money when it started, and that money is still being paid back. And then there's also debt that broadband incurred that's being paid back, and then reinvestments in the plant and expansion capital costs. So that's what that money is used for.
so it's not net income, it's net income minus everything else that you're paying off. So I think it'd be better to show it that way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Carlin, you had a question?
Yeah, could you tell us what the take rate is for broadband and who the primary competitors are for the town's broadband service?
Yes. I can tell you that, I'll start with a competitor. I just updated the take rate the other day, so I was trying to remember the number. Comcast is the primary competitor. Verizon Fios never came to Concord, so residential customers really have Comcast as their option. There's limited cell carriers that offer in-home internet service here that works for people, and things like Starlink or other satellite internet do not compare with the symmetrical speeds that you get with broadband. With broadband, your upload speed is as fast as your download speed, so even Comcast has a difficulty matching that. So we don't really compete in that area. If people expect to have fast upload speeds, then fiber is the only way to do it. Can I grab a resource? And feel free to ask another question, and I'll tell you what the take rate is.
Well, I was thinking that you have 1848 customers broadband, and I'm trying to figure out how many households from the light plant, roughly about 6,000-ish, I'm guessing. So my guess is it's about a 30% take rate, but if you have more accurate numbers, let us know.
30 sounds right, but what I will say is that when we do our take rate, we do parcels that are available and parcels that take it. So we exclude places where we can't even offer the service because obviously they can't take it. So of the 6,000 or 6,500 households, we're reducing that before we calculate it.
Any other questions from the Finance Committee? No one online. Do we have any questions from the public? We'll start in the room. Okay, Mary, if you want to approach the microphone.
Hi, I'm Mary Hartman, 16 Concord Green, member of the Select Board, speaking for myself. I've got a question about the capital outlay, Jason, for the light plant. I noticed in calendar year 26, you're spending about $10 million, and I didn't hear you mention batteries when you were listing, and I do know that the town approved, I think, a $10 million warrant article 2 years ago for a battery because of MCI, and we thought we would have solar saturation. So I'm wondering if you could give us an update on that in relative to your capital outlay forecast.
Absolutely. So CMLP is pursuing energy storage right now. We always had hoped that we would find the best financing method possible for battery storage in Concord and in ways we could mitigate some of the risks and unknowns when it comes to peak shaving and some of these capacity and transmission costs that are avoided when you dispatch a battery. So the first battery that we're pursuing is we're planning on using a shared savings model. And what that means is that the developer pays all the upfront capital for the battery and then shares a split based on what's negotiated of those avoided capacity and transmission costs. And the reason why we're pursuing this, in particular at the landfill, is that we're trying to add as much solar as we can in this town. There's been a solar task force, recommendations, climate action, resilience plan. All of these things look to add more and more solar. And we have a problem with solar in that we can only take so much before power protection devices fail and before power tries to go out of Concord. So what this battery will do at this particular site is limit the total exported solar from the site, because once it hits a threshold that we agree upon, it can go into a battery. Then that battery can be used to dispatch later during these capacity and transmission peaks to save ratepayers money, and that saved money will be split between the developer who puts the upfront cost and CMLP. The reason why we're pursuing it at this particular site is that this is one site where we can add a lot more solar. We're expecting to go from 1.5 megawatts to 4 megawatts. That's a huge increase. And we can't do that without a battery at this site. We also don't really have the resources to add 2 or 3 projects in a given year. We're already working on time of day rates, rolling out advanced meters, doing rate redesign, rebuilding a team after retirements, all these other things that are happening, substation upgrades, roofs, parking lots, vehicles. So we thought we could take on one battery project right now at a time, and we still plan to use that borrowing authorization. I will tell you, having that money makes it a lot easier to negotiate with people too, because when you're looking at the shared savings, a developer who has all the resources can obviously negotiate a better position. If you are in a position to do that yourself, then you're kind of at equal footing, and so you're going to get a much better deal. So we've already leveraged our borrowing authorization to, I think, get a really good deal. We're trying to move forward at that site. And then we will continue to pursue energy storage where it makes sense. We had talked about the school. It depends there if we can do it. And then potentially at the W.R. Gray site or substation location somewhere else, that's going to help on the other bus. Bus number 2, where MCI Concord was our more critical bus, which is why we were looking at that. By adding 2.5 megawatts of solar to the landfill, it basically creates the same problem over there. So adding the battery at this time will prevent that from becoming the case, and it will limit the solar to an amount that we can handle and still allow continued residential solar adoption. Did I cover everything? Yeah.
Other questions in the room?
Thanks, Jason. Cameron McKenna, 64 Nut Meadow Crossing. I'm a member of the Select Board, speaking on my own behalf. Appreciate the question, Mary, and the comment there on the complexities of adding more solar. Jason, in one of your slides, you mentioned sort of the energy mix. You talked about a component, that first component, that was kind of a blend of things. My understanding is that all the energy we're getting in Concord is clean energy source, and that there isn't any fossil fuel there. I just wanted to clarify there, because there was a bar that was a little bit of fossil fuel, and then it went away. There's this other green one that said it's kind of a mix. My understanding, though, was everything we get is 100% clean energy. Is that the case?
So the electricity that flows into the substation is managed by the larger transmission network and the ISO New England grid. It's the same power that Maynard gets, that Sudbury gets. The electricity is blended on the system. So it's comprised of all the sources that exist out there. We contract power ahead of time from various sources. So we pay a wind operator for so many megawatt hours of wind in a year. We pay a hydroelectric contract to get so many megawatt hours of hydro. And so what you saw in that blend was what we actually contract for. And then somebody daily is saying, okay, what did Concord buy? What did those resources generate, which was likely put onto the wires? And then what is the difference and what is the discrepancy? And that's the spot market. That's what we're buying in real time. And that's the grid mix that is kind of like whatever else there is. And it can be non-emitting and it can be emitting. But yes, there is no way, unless you're generating solar yourself in your own house, to have truly non-emitting power, as it's all part of a New England network.
I guess, yeah, that's helpful, because I've just seen things that says 100% of our power is
Right,
clean.
that's what the regs do.
Okay, got it. So the recs do offset that and end up with 100% clean. Okay, and then just one other question. So with a gas ban in Concord, right? So there's no natural gas going into any new construction. How are you thinking about that? Like, so it's all electric, clean energy. Are we ready for that with all the new developments that are sort of like being proposed, or the ones that have been approved? Like, if that is, I don't know how those are being thought of, and sort of what the planning is, in particular with ones that have already sort of looked like they're going ahead, but also as we look forward to like MCI and those kinds of things as an example.
That's a great question. So obviously when we have time to plan, it makes it a lot easier. So when we know of developments like Novo or the Thoreau Hills or some of these other 40Bs that are coming to Concord, Newbury Court expansions, whatever happens at MCI, those are long lead times where we can plan and understand what the requirements will be, pre-order equipment, upsize transformers, things like that. What does make it difficult is when electrification happens in areas that are already developed, where we might have had an expectation for low demand in the past. And we know about rebates that we give. So when people get a heat pump rebate or a solar rebate, we know about that going in. But for folks who don't use rebates, or for the small electrification that happens without our knowledge, then obviously that does create problems sometimes where transformers blow and they need to be upsized, and that can be a surprise. And when I say blow, they usually trip. They don't explode. It just says we need more power than we can. We're asking for more power than we can deliver, and a fuse trips, and we say, well, why did that trip? And then we look at that area. As I mentioned, that SCADA system will hopefully give us a lot more data about that. And our advanced metering system is already helping us kind of model problem areas so we can look at them a lot closer when we have that live feeder data. And so I think that right now, some of those big developments, to answer your question, we feel like we're in a pretty good position to respond and be ready with the infrastructure. The one thing that I will mention is that transmission project that I alluded to earlier. That will be pivotal down the road as we continue to electrify and add more housing units in Concord. That right now we have 2 big transformers, and our load doesn't exceed 50% of either one of them, which means that in a pinch, when we need to do work, we can take down one whole transformer side of the town and just connect it to the other one. But there will become a time when that isn't the case, when our load exceeds 50%. And if we ever need to do work, we can't. And that's why we want to plan and try to get ahead of that so that we add that extra load capacity long before it becomes difficult to manage.
Hi, Paul Baum, 11 Ridgewood Road, member of the Select Board, asking a question on my own behalf. Jason, there was a program, and maybe it still exists, on burial of transmission lines in town. Is that still an active program of burial of transmission lines underground? And is that progressing at a pace, or is it because climate resilience is part of it? Can you say something about that program?
So as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we do have a dedicated underground fund, and that's used to take existing overhead areas and underground them. We do that on a regular basis. It's incredibly expensive, and it's getting more expensive every year. It can be a couple $1 million per mile to underground power. We obviously have a priority list of areas where we think that for historical character, for resilience, for complicated feeder connections, where it really makes sense to aim for those areas first. And also we work in conjunction with Public Works and the paving plan and the town's kind of master plan and where things are happening, so that if we know that, for example, an intersection is going to be slated for redevelopment in a couple of years, we might aim to target that area so that we can be in a better position. We typically go in fits and spurts because of the cost, Paul. So, for example, one year we may do a lot of prep work and bury conduit, and then another year we may actually do all the work where we bring all the lines underground. Because when we underground a neighborhood, we actually underground the service to the homes individually. If you would like to underground your service yourself, then you pay for that. But if we underground, we actually pay for everything to make sure all the houses along the area are underground. And so it's a huge expense when we go through and do an area. So, you might see a year or two where small project, and then you'll see a really big project where we'll underground a mile or two in a particular area. So we still do that, and we're, aim to continue on.
Thank you. Just to follow up, we have a lot of road paving going on, and as Alan Cathcart has talked about, is there some opportunity to piggyback on a road paving program for burial? Would that decrease the costs?
Absolutely. And I think that Public Works getting that larger known capital amount at town meeting last year will help, because they can develop this 5-year plan. And that's, historically been a challenge, because due to uncertainty with road conditions and what maybe happens in the winter or culverts failing, like the priorities may shift sometimes. And to underground an area takes extensive engineering work and planning. And so we have some areas that are kind of planned and ready to go. Like we know exactly what we do when the opportunity comes, but sometimes that opportunity shifts because of these other needs. But, and then is that your last question? Okay. I'll just mention, Carlin, 28.6 is the take rate that we have.
Thank you.
So it's now 7:45, and we have only 9 more articles to go. Are there any further questions on Article 40 before we can move to Article 41? Then, thank you, Jason. And let's move to Article 41, and that's the stormwater system expenditures. Who's going to be presenting on that?
Carla, Lois, we have Steve Dukran, who's our town engineer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, members. My name is Steve Dukran, town engineer. I'm here to present the information regarding Article 41. As the article indicates, we are looking for approval for the FY27 budget for the stormwater utility expenditures. So, too fast. There you go. All right. Here we want to just show you quickly what our major needs are. They include cleaning of our drains and pipes, which are, many of them are in deteriorated condition. Flooding, street flooding, either by a blocked system or because of the not enough capacity in the drain system. Failing culverts, sinkholes caused by failed underground drainage, and what we don't have a picture, but addressing regulatory requirements that get stricter every time they come out. Why does this keep happening? Okay. What's behind the budget here? We have a large, extensive system. It's town-wide, as shown in that little map. and that system needs a lot of attention. The federal MS4 permit keeps adding strict requirements every time they renew it. We have had years of underfunding for the stormwater, deferring much needed maintenance and repairs. Every failure threatens natural resources, and we have to build a budget for failures. We have to be prepared for climate threats from climate warming, and our current staffing and equipment are not sufficient for the required maintenance. Let me just, for members who are probably new to this, what we did in the past few years, just look back at the work that went into developing this enterprise, which is still its infancy. This is just our second year of trying to get a budget. Not on the slide there was the work done in 2023 when we completed a feasibility study for this enterprise. Then in 2024 at the annual town meeting, we had overwhelming support for establishing the enterprise bylaw and the regulations. In 2025, the Public Works Commission approved the rate schedule, and then at the 2025 town meeting, we had again overwhelming support for the 2026 enterprise budget. Here, we're showing the chart of the estimated budget expenditures for FY27. There you can see each area with its estimate. I want to just point out the larger areas: infrastructure improvement, that will be through the capital work for repairs. Then we have cleaning of pipes and catch basin, that's a large amount, trying to catch up on what we've been behind on, and other professional services to prepare asset management and design of repairs. I won't go into the smaller ones, only if you needed me to. The intention of this slide was to go into more detail. Again, if you want me to, I know you run behind, but essentially what this is showing is that there's a combination of costly MS4 permit requirements and system issues. Similarly, the slide, again, I won't go into detail, but except for item 1 on the list, the rest of the 4 items are for somewhat fixed costs to administer the program. So how would we fund our expenditures? Through the revenues projected at $1.09 million. We intend to build all of the parcels, similar to what we are doing in the current fiscal year. And those parcels include all government-owned properties as well as nonprofits. The rates are based on the impervious area on a parcel. And we ask this question all the time, exactly what is impervious area? So those are like roofs, building roofs, paved areas, even gravel or dirt driveways that are compacted and are preventing the soaking of stormwater runoff into the ground. Note that the revenues are based on current rates. We are not proposing any increase at this time. However, we want to be able to assess where we are as the revenue stream stabilizes, and as we look at whether we can afford or we can meet the obligations under the expenditure budget. Just to review quickly the rates, here we have the first of two types of parcels, what we call the small residential, which is the 1 to 3 family units, and you see five tiers. Each tier is a range of impervious area on a parcel. So for instance, let's take the middle one. If your property falls between 5,000 and 10,000 square feet, your annual fee is $144.31, which equates to about $12 a month, and we bill monthly. This following slide is the rate schedule for the non-residential, which would include commercial and institutional, as well as the larger multifamily residentials, larger being 4 units or greater. There are 10 tiers here. And this last slide is to just touch on the credits available to property owners. They are predicated on owners having improvements on their property that promote water quality and infiltration. For small residentials, the credit is up to 25%. For larger properties, non-residential and multifamily, that credit is up to 50%. There's also credit for income-eligible households. So that's it for the presentation, and open for any questions you may have.
Thank you. I'm going to start with the Finance Committee. Does anyone have any questions for, Lindsay does?
Oh, go ahead. And he has one too.
You go first.
What?
He has one too.
You go
Okay.
first.
Can you remind us, I think this was stated last year when this was being set up, but how much of the budget is incremental versus moving over from DPW, from what was already being spent within Public Works' own budget previous to this fund?
The budget that was shown on the chart, I won't bring it up. It shows a transfer to,
Or I guess before we had the Stormwater Enterprise Fund, how much were we spending on stormwater?
so it was sporadic. We had a small appropriation every year, sometimes 50,000, sometimes 25, and so nothing that was large, except if we had an emergency, like a failed culvert, we might get a special appropriation. Last year, we did the repair on the Baker Ave culvert that was paid for through ARPA funding. So it's small amounts varied from year to year.
So there wasn't really much catch basin cleaning happening, or?
Yes, the budget carried by hiring grounds, it's a minimal amount.
Don?
Thanks for the breakdown of the budget. It's mostly self-explanatory. Catch basin cleaning, infrastructure improvement, engineering services. But the largest category is called other professional technical services. I'm wondering if you could give some sense of what that is.
Yes, that larger amount will be dedicated to hiring engineering companies to assess the system properly, looking at what's needed, developing an asset management, designing some improvements that we can build in the following year using the following, the budget in the following year. We have a number of culverts that need to be replaced. We got to develop the priorities and develop the designs.
Okay. Thank you.
Paul?
Yeah, thank you for as Don said, the budget and the explanation of it. And I do see that you do not anticipate increasing rates, but I don't see any revenue numbers that I could use to compare the overall revenue coming in with those rates to compare it to the budget expenditures, which would be really useful information from the enterprise fund standpoint of making sure that you're meeting your obligations. Can you comment a little bit about that?
Yes, so the revenue, the gross revenue that we're proposing is about $1.09 million, and that was calculated based on, just exactly like we're doing this year, based on how many parcels fit into each range in each tier, whether they're small residential or larger. And so it's the same kind of calculations.
I believe you. It would just be useful that if that information is kind of straightforward, to show that the enterprise fund is covering the budgetary expenditures. I believe that they're
Paul,
useful.
it is on one of the slides.
Is it on one of the slides?
Yeah, it's on one of the slides.
I missed it, so.
No, that's okay, but it's,
So maybe like.
it's not, it's pretty widely separated from
Okay.
the budget figures, so
Okay.
that might be a note
So
for town
maybe
meeting.
maybe make my, missing it as a sign that maybe not everybody will see it, so.
Yeah, it might be useful to have the revenues and the expenses more closely aligned with each other in the way the slides are presented to anticipate that question, because it's a very valid concern.
Okay.
Is some of the information that Paul is looking for contained in the enterprise component of the town's budget book that's now available online? The breakdown, a more detailed
Yes.
breakdown of the revenues and expenses, because the enterprise book is contained within the town's budget book. I don't think it's been separated out yet. Does that have the detailed breakdown?
Maybe that's a question for Carrie or for Ryan or Jennifer?
The expenses are broken down in the budget book. You can see those in one place. The revenue is not. It is a single source of revenue, but the figure is included.
Okay. And is the large category of revenues that Don had asked about, is that broken down further, or is it in that? Is it refined any further, or is it just the 32% for, I think it was other professional technical services?
The detail is not included in the budget book, but we can certainly add some information.
Okay, great, thank you. Any questions from the Finance Committee online? No raised hands? Oh, Brian.
Yeah, and hi there. Thank you for the presentation. My question was just a clarification of Lindsay's question. And was it confirmed that prior to having the enterprise fund that stormwater was only spent, there was only expenses on like a need to spend basis, and it was significantly lower? I thought you mentioned like 50,000, 30,000. Is that correct? And is it due to just like build up, deferred maintenance?
Yes, the answer is pretty much, the reason why we are in this situation is because of deferred maintenance.
And I guess a follow-up question to that, do you expect the expenses to, and I apologize if you shared this projection, but as we catch up on the deferred, is there going to be a lowering of expense over like a 3 or 5 year period, or we have quite a bit of years to go?
It is reasonable to expect something like that, but we until we start putting it into practice, it's hard to predict when that will happen. In the last couple of years, as we put this program forward and we We discussed it in public. We talked about having a budget that's affordable, and the budget is actually, at this rate, which you're saying it's affordable, it's probably going to take 20 years to really get to where we want to be with getting all our systems not just maintained, but also repaired. We have a lot of underground infrastructure that needs to be replaced and repaired, and that's the spending of the $375,000 that we talked about. That's the beginning of looking at those systems. So it could be a long time before we can get to where we need to be.
I wonder if I could just make a quick comment to put some perspective. So the projects that Steve is referring to, the Sawmill Brook, and we have the Spencer Brook project teed up, those are about $600,000 projects. And we have, I don't know how many more are coming, but on a budget that's $900,000 to $1 million or so, you can see that most of that is being spent in the early years on those big projects, and then the balance just on the routine maintenance and cleaning. And again, Steve mentioned in the operating budget maybe anywhere up to about $50,000 included, and then any really project money you had was in capital, and it was probably never more than $200,000 in any fiscal year. That's my recollection, and it was probably closer to 100 or so. So there's been a lot of years of significant underfunding of this work, and now a lot of catch-up.
Do we have any other questions
That's
for
helpful,
Steve?
thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions from the public for Steve? I see one approaching the microphone.
Dean Banfield, 73 Walden Terrace. This is not a budget question necessarily, but there was a slide indicating the framework under which the stormwater assessment is assessed. And then there were a few elements of how it could be abated if you did various things on your property. Is there anything associated with the topology of your property? We have a lot of riverfront here in the town, and those properties drain towards the river and not towards roads. So I'm just wondering if there's any abatement that goes along with the actual topology of a person's property.
This question has been brought to our attention a number of times since we started sending out the bills in January. So we built into the program a credit system for owners to install best management practices to promote water quality and infiltration. And the credit policy was brought to the Public Works Commission, and so those are the criteria for credits. So the reason why there's a limit to how much credit you can give, 25% for small residential and 50% for larger properties, is because the public system is what will be taking most of the funding to deal with, and all users are using the public system to some extent. So the question about topography, topology, whether runoff is leaving the property or not, should they get a credit? Remember, the credit is for putting the water in the ground, cleaning the water and putting it in the ground and that kind of thing. And so you may not have, even though the water doesn't leave your property for a certain storm, at some point in time, the water is going to leave and it's going to get into the public system. So we haven't done an evaluation for that. We can continue to consider that, but at this point in time, we have not. And we will continue to discuss it, and if should a change in the policy be needed, we will bring it to the Public Works Commission for discussion.
Thank you. If there are any other questions about the stormwater system budget, then we will move on. Thank you very much for the presentation. Okay, the next item on our list is the solid waste disposal fund expenditures.
Good evening. Aaron McCloskey, Highway and Ground Superintendent, Concord Public Works. Article 43, to determine whether the town will authorize income from user fees for solid waste disposal services, associated services, and jobbing services by Concord Public Works during the 2027 fiscal year, together with a balance of operating cash in the solid waste disposal fund, to be expended without further appropriation of the discretion and the control of the town manager, in accordance with the motion passed in Article 27 of the 1989 town meeting, or take any action relative thereto. So the goal of Concord Public Works solid waste and recycling program is to provide an efficient, sustainable, cost-effective solid waste collection and disposal service and recycling services for the subscribers of the town, curbside recycling and trash program. An overview of the curbside program: it's a weekly automated collection service. The town issued and leased carts are provided as a pay-as-you-throw program. We consider it environmentally sustainable. It's very cost-effective compared to other private programs provided. There's a scheduled bulk pickup available to subscribers. There's monthly billing that's been provided starting just about 4 months ago. We have online payment system now, and it's a single stream recycling program. This is just one of the many programs that this fund provides, but it's the largest component of the expenditures. A little bit of overview of the program, just based on the last few years, number of subscribers in our recycling and trash collection and recycling rate. Most recently, in 2025, we've had 3,935 customers. You can see in 24 we had a significant increase in customers, by over 200, and a similar 200 customers increase last year. That's due to our program change. For any of you that might be subscribers to the program, we went from manual collection and dual stream recycling to an automated collection and single stream recycling in 2024. We saw a significant uptick in subscribers over the last 2 years and continue to see customers add monthly. Our recycling rate is 41%. We are very high in the Commonwealth. We have very active customers and participants in the program, and a lot of people recycling curbside, which is great. Getting into the financials. So this is the expenditure chart. You can see the total expected expenditures for 2027 for this fund, $2,498,257. Over 80% of the planned expenditures are contracted service costs. So that's both curbside, trash, recycling, collection, disposal fees, and the cost of municipal operations. Other fees include personnel services, some of the other services we provide, like cardboard collection and recycling down to the Kais Road site, some of our billing services, and we have a annual kind of zero waste day, drop-off, swap-off event, as it's referred to. Our revenue projection matches the expenditure projection. I would note in here that we have a contribution of just over $20,000 of retained earnings to mate that and be in the black for next year. Again, most of our revenue is generated from our residential curbside customers, followed by the schools and other services that we provide for the towns. This chart shows our expenditures versus revenue projections and also our fund balance over the last 4 fiscal years. You can see some actual and budgeted numbers here. You can see a drop in the fund balance over the last 2 years. We've provided a 4.5% increase to ratepayers over the last year. We did that intentionally using retained earnings to kind of draw that balance down to come within the financial policy guidance of 2 months of retained earning balance available, and we're continuing to do that and stay on that trend for FY27. And again, the article. Open to questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions from the Finance Committee? Harlan has one.
Aaron, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Jason. What's your take rate? What percentage of the possible household subscribers, residential,
So
are
we
using
have-
the service? Because this is a competitive service, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yep.
So I'll go back to the subscriber slide, 3,900 subscribers. We have about 5,500 eligible households that could participate in the program. So the balance of those either have their own private haulers or they have another means of solid waste and recycling collection.
And thank you. And then what's been the general attitude about your subscribers of having just to throw away one bin instead of two, single instead of dual?
I'm going to go back to that same slide. We've had a significant uptick in customers, kind of word of mouth. They see their neighbors getting those, the toters, and they're calling to say, how do I get the toters, right? So we're significant increase in customers, positive feedback overall. Obviously, this service isn't for everyone, so we have seen a few people that were previously subscribers have dropped off, but a lot of people are adding to the program for the services we provide, and then they also, when they see the price point, we are very competitive in the market.
So you added about 300 customers between 21 and 25. Is that about 10% increase, would you say?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions from the Finance Committee? Online from the Finance Committee? Brian? No. Okay. Questions from the public? In the room? I see none. Anyone online have any questions? Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation.
You're welcome.
All right, the next item we'll be hearing about is the sewer system expenditures, Article 44.
Good evening, Darren LaFlamme, Water and Sewer Superintendent. Just a procedural note, the next article is mine also. It's Article 45, sewer improvement fee. It's inextricably tied to this article, so the Article 45 itself is just the request. Any information regarding the SIF fee can be found in this article, and questions about the SIF fee should be directed during this article as well. Article 44, we're asking for the town to authorize the user fees, special services, and jobbing services by the Water and Sewer Department, including retained earnings, for work during the fiscal year 27 to be expended without further appropriation under the direct control of the town manager. The sewer system in Concord comprises about 30% of the town. It includes one advanced wastewater treatment plant, 2 large-scale pump stations, 6 neighborhood lift stations, 34 miles of main, and 903 manholes. Projected revenues for fiscal year 27, here's the breakdown, including $3.1 million from user fees, $120,000 from investments, almost $112,000 from septage fees, that's discharges of trucks at the wastewater treatment plant, $6,000 in service charges, $1,000 in tax and title, and other $1,000, for a total of $3.339 million. Here's a breakdown of our expenditures. The largest expenditure is the Wooded and Curran Management contract. We just reviewed that contract to make sure we're getting good value from it, and I was pleased with the findings after reviewing it with them. Our capital improvement plan for fiscal year 27 lists these spendings. $500,000 for hydraulic assessment. As you know, sewer in this town is an interesting proposition right now with a lot of variables in the near future. So we're doing our research to figure out what our opportunities are. $300,000 for repairs at our existing wastewater treatment plant, including updating the drives on the clarifiers. $275,000 to work on the efficiency of our 32 miles of collection system. If we can reduce our inflow and infiltration, it'll improve our capacity at the plant this time of the year when the snow's melting. $150,000 on wastewater treatment plant equipment, including odor control media replacement. $160,000 at sewer stations and structures. The sewer fees are also read by the water meters. That's how they're calculated. So some of the new water meter replacement is paid for by the sewer department, $110,000, and then $64,000 for other miscellaneous charges. This is a graph that you're going to be seeing more of in the future. We lost Bob Hill. He had a doctorate in spreadsheets. I don't have a doctorate in spreadsheets. When you're looking to spend millions and millions and millions of dollars over the coming decade, you need to know that you're going to be able to do that and how you're going to do that. This is a tool that we've adopted called Waterworth that lets us project what we're doing into the future and tweak variables to see how it works out. The green mountain that you see in the center is capital spending. The smaller light green mountain is retained earning spending. And what we pay attention to is that black line. That's the health of our department, that's our retained earnings. And we want to trend above that dotted red line. That's 9 months of operating expenses. The model you see here in front of you is a 10-year model projecting only $10 million in improvements needed to our existing wastewater treatment plant to keep it running efficiently. This next model includes those $10 million of improvements at our wastewater treatment plant. It also includes $13 million in capacity expansion projects. The model that you're looking at plans those capacity expansion projects at our existing wastewater treatment plant, but of course, if we decided to spend that money elsewhere for other capacity expansion, we have proved that we can afford it over the coming 10 years, so we could appropriate that money elsewhere. All of this is looking at a 5% rate increase this year. If we go with the base model, that rate increase drops to 3% each of the next 9 years. If we went with the second model, scenario B over the next 10 years, including the $13 million for capacity expansion, we would stay at 5% increases until 2031, and then we would drop to 3% increases. You can see the impact that this 5% rate increase is going to have on the average home, $42.93. I'm open to any questions. And again, this would be a good time to ask SIF questions as well as sewer questions.
Okay, we'll start with Carlin.
Could you tell me about how many households are served with sewer in Concord?
I don't have the number in my head, but it's about 1/3 of the town. I could phone a friend.
Please do. It seems like it's been 1/3 for a long time.
Well, it's very limited, and we're not really taking on new customers because our capacity is very limited. The plant's flow limit is 1.2 million gallons per day, and yesterday it was over 1.1.
Okay.
This is the time of year you expect that, again, with all the runoff.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions on this article? Lindsay?
You talked about the review of the management contract. How often do you review that contract, and what's the process?
We're looking at possibilities for the future that could include the MCI plant. We got a price to see what it would contract to run that plant. And if you look at the flow of our existing plant and the cost to run it, and the flow of that plant and the cost projected to run it, it was quite a discrepancy. So it got us starting to think, would it be worth it if we operated our own plant in-house? So we asked the engineer company to review. We did our own price calculations, and they're like, that's not accurate. So they did theirs. They presented their side of the story. It was compelling. They're doing a good job. They're operating at about 9% profit. And that's, in my mind, that's pretty good compared to they can get away with fewer personnel because they have a manager that's overseeing it that's not on site, and the DEP mandates staffing requirements. So he's going to count as one of the staff, even though we're only paying a fraction of his salary. So we would incur additional costs if we were to adopt it. We would probably have to put 4 people there. So there are cost savings built into the management contract. But that's something we're going to continue to do, again, as we explore all other scenarios in town with possibly the MCI plant. We're going to continue to review these possibilities and make sure if we do use an engineering company to do the work, we're getting good value for that service. And at this time, after that review, I believe that we are.
I have a question. We've been hearing for years about the constraints on capacity. Is my understanding correct that that's an issue more of federal permissions or permitting rather than of physical constraints?
The plant has a design capacity and a permitted capacity by the regulators of 1.2. That's not something that they change without modifications to the plant. You would have to spend the money on the modifications and get their approval that says if you do this work and you can achieve these objectives, we would increase your capacity. That's one of the things that we're looking at there. And the projected capacity increase of that $13 million worth of work would be 150,000 gallons per day. Again, we would still need regulatory approval before we proceeded with that work. But that gives you a value ratio, $13 million for 150,000 gallons per day compared to the cost of adopting another plant that needs $25 million worth of upgrades and has a permit capacity of 0.32 million.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any questions online from Finance Committee members? Brian, Pat? Nope. Okay, do we have any questions in the room? I see the moderator approaching the microphone.
Carmen Reese, 52 Devon Street. I'm the moderator, but this is just a question for me. I'm just curious about whether the septic trucks that come and deposit waste to the wastewater treatment plant are from Concord septic systems only, or do they come from outside of Concord as well?
Phoning a friend? Concord only.
Hi, Dean Banfield, 73 Walden Terrace. Going back to your two charts for the two options for improvement of the plan, you show a cash line, which you will then bring that cash down in order to make some of these improvements.
Correct.
However, the two models show a completely different starting point for cash. One shows a starting point in 2023 of $9 million, and the other model shows a starting point of $4 million. Can you just explain that?
Sure. One of those is taking into account.
Can you come to the microphone, please?
One of those models incorporated the SIF funds that we have right now, 4.44 million, into the retained earnings. Whichever model we use, keep in mind the SIF funds are only going to be used for projects that relate to capacity. The first model you saw didn't relate to capacity, so we weren't touching the SIF funds, we were touching retained earnings. But overall, they're both going to be used the same way to minimize borrowing for the projects we have in our future.
Thank you. I see no other questions in the room. Anyone online? Okay, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you. Darren LaFlamme, Water and Sewer Superintendent.
All right, let's go on to Article 44. 40.
I don't see 45 on here. 45, it's literally just this title screen, requesting allocation of our funds for our use through the permission of the town manager. Any questions on Article 45?
I see none in the room. From Finance Committee, anything online? Thank you.
Yep. Article 46, the Water Department requesting income, user fees, special services, jobbing services of the Water Sewer Department for fiscal year 27, including retained earnings, to be expended without further appropriation through the control of the town manager. The water system consists of one surface water supply, 6 groundwater supplies, 7 pump stations, 2 advanced treatment facilities, 2 storage reservoirs, 134 miles of distribution mains, and 1,339 hydrants. We are going to be spending some money in the future, and these are the driving factors on that spending. The primary is regulatory, and I'm sure we've all heard PFAS thrown around an awful lot. Another factor on there is obviously cybersecurity, which day by day is getting more important, and we need to do some investing there in the near future as well. Here is our capital improvement plan for fiscal year 27. The 2 big items are PFAS treatment at one of 2 wells that are needing it, either Second Division or U-Cargill. Work on NAGOG intake and engineering towards a treatment facility. Water main replacement, and then you can see the smaller, more typical maintenance expenses. Proposed expenditures for fiscal year '27. Revenues, user fees, account. You can see there's a big discrepancy here. I'm going to I know somebody's going to call me out if I don't address this. We've had some staff turnover, and your current staff doesn't understand depreciation used in accounting. So this chart is excluding $1.7 million worth of depreciation that was included last year. That's why you see a big discrepancy between here and here. User fees, $9.5 million. Investment income, $250,000. Service charges, almost $78,000. For a total budget of $9.88 million. And why? This is the 10-year forecast for the water department. So look at the size of that Green Mountain. You can see in the past years, a lot of money has been appropriated towards the water department. Again, this is driven by regulatory factors. We're going to start spending that money. You can see because of prior planning, because of a healthy retained earnings, we are able to spend this mountain of spending, including the smaller Green Mountain of retained earnings, while retaining a healthy retained earnings over the next 10 years plus, while upgrading NAGOG, building a filtration plant and a PFAS treatment plant, and building 2 PFAS treatment plants at the 2 wells that are needing it. I don't know how we would plan our future without this software, at least without Bob Hill here. Right now, we're looking at a 12.5% raise. These are the impacts that it's going to have on each average consumer. 108 per year. And discounted customers save up to almost $400 per year with their discounted rate. This concludes the Water Department presentation. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Carlin, go ahead.
Okay, the slide you have regarding your capital improvement plan shows $5 million for PFAS. How does that relate to another article that we've heard, article number 24, which concerned a PFAS transferation? Is there a dollar amount relationship?
Directly, but Article 24 is money we're getting in a class action lawsuit against the PFAS manufacturers. Any proceeds that we get from that, it's like it's going to go straight into retained earnings to be used towards PFAS projects so that we can minimize our capital expenditures, our borrowing.
So that PFAS from Article 24, is that going to be part of that $5 million?
It will be, yep.
Ah, good, thank you.
Yep.
Other questions? Anyone online? No hands online. Anyone in the room? One question.
Wendy Ravelli, Select Board member, speaking for myself. I just want to clarify, we had a $50 million borrowing a few years ago, and I'm assuming that your capital plan is going to fully consume that borrowing. Is that a fair statement?
Can I go back to it?
Absolutely.
See the red bars, the vertical red bars? That's our capital spending. In addition, it's also our retained earnings spending, so it's a combination of the two. But yes, I'm currently working to contract with an engineer to proceed with PFAS treatment at our 2 wells, and we're trying to determine the best path forward for NAGOG. That's challenging because of the land restriction. It's challenging because the state is looking to possibly do something at the rotary on Route 2, which is right near the existing lot where we have a current plant design for. So we're trying to find the best path forward there. That's coming up in discussions with the MCI property as well. But we are moving forward, contracting with an engineer in the near future to proceed with the well treatment plants in particular.
Any other questions? Nope. Anybody online with a question? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to Article 47, the PEG Access Fund.
Hello, my name is Julie Manukian. I'm the manager of Minuteman Media. This is Article 47. The motion says, Mr. Howell, request the town transfer from the PEG Access and Cable Related Fund in the amount of $592,000. Just a quick overview and some highlights. We are an award-winning community TV and podcast studio. We cover Concord and Carlisle. We produce public, educational, and government content. Annually, we record about 600 meetings, and we're recording this one today, of course. Town meeting, select board, finance committee meetings. And we also annually produce 100 podcasts. And we just launched in FY26 a new podcast called Civic Concord, which is hosted by Deputy Town Manager Megan Zamuto, and you can listen to that on Spotify. You can watch all of our programs on Comcast cable television. You can watch on demand on YouTube, where we currently have 4,000 videos. We are also now streaming, and you can watch us on your phone, and you can download the Minuteman Media app. We are located in the high school, where we train students, and we help them produce original content. Some exciting highlights this year, the first one being the Comcast contract renewal, which I will discuss in a later slide. And also in FY26, I am happy to announce that we are upgrading the equipment in this room, the hearing room and the select board meeting room. We are upgrading cameras, microphones, and speakers. Our control room is the little room back here. And we are hoping for that to be installed in the early summer. We are doing the same at the Concord Library. We are collaborating with them, and we are installing cameras in the Goodwin Forum, which is one of the most popular, which is the most popular room besides the townhouse, where we are asked to film. So we are going to be installing cameras there also in early summer. I'll note that we are installing cameras in the Concord Middle School library. Now, the Concord Middle School is paying for that equipment, but we selected it. We're overseeing the install, and of course, we're going to be operating that equipment. So here are the numbers. FY27 budget, $592,000. Forecasting revenue at $400,000, and of course, that is a delta of $192 coming from our special revenue fund. Speaking of which, this is how it has looked over the past few years. The FY26 number, as it is listed in the budget book, is $2 million, but over the last few years, it has slightly fluctuated. And now, a breakdown of the budget. Operating is $447,000. Capital, $145,000. So breakdown of that operating is personnel cost, $393,000. That is an increase because we have a new full-time employee who is Arkady, and he is in that control room right now filming this meeting. The indirect costs, $27,000. That is an increase, and that is from the finance department doing their reassessment, and that was the figure we were given. And then the remaining expenses, $26,000. So capital budget, what we intend to do with that, and some of our goals, is we are going to upgrade the TV studio at the high school. It is currently about 10 years old, and all of the equipment is outdated. So we will be buying new cameras, microphones, and lighting. We're going to be building a control room, and that is because we've had so much growth with our podcasts. So we're kind of repurposing our space, and the vision is to have one podcast studio and as well as a TV studio. We'll be upgrading our field equipment, buying encoders so that we can live stream meetings and parades. So this is a one-time large capital number here. Moving forward in subsequent years, The 5-year capital spending plan is going to be much less. I'm forecasting about $45,000 in the next few years. FY 28, 29, 30. It'll be much less because what we're spending in FY 26 and FY 27, upgrading all of these rooms, is going to be very sustainable and will last us another 5-10 years. So there's what I just said, 45,000. So now let's talk about revenue. So we're forecasting 400,000 in revenue. We have 2 revenue sources. The first, of course, is Comcast Cable, and the second is the town of Carlisle. We charge them for all of the videos and podcasts and meetings that we film and edit for them. So we're projecting 36,000 from Carlisle, and that has increased over time. We're doing more and more work with them. Some more detail on the Comcast revenue piece. So now in Carlisle, now in Concord, we have 3,300 households that thankfully are still paying for cable. They are paying their Comcast Xfinity bill, and they are watching Minuteman Media on basic cable on television. The Comcast contract renewal is a big highlight of this year. It's a 10-year contract, and thanks to Jason Bulger, our PEG Advisory Committee, and our attorney, this is what has been yielded from the contract. This represents some new revenue, increased revenue that we're going to be getting. We'll start with the quarterly franchise fee, which is 5% of Comcast's gross annual revenue in Concord, again, based on those 3,300 households. We project about $82,000 in franchise fees per quarter. In addition, there's a quarterly payment of 0.6% of Comcast gross annual revenue, specifically for our capital use, and that we're projecting to be $1,968. In addition, there will be annual payments of $28,000, again, for our capital funding. And finally, an annual license fee of 50 cents per household subscriber, which would be $1,650, and all of that sums up to $360. And that concludes Article 47. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions from the Finance Committee? Carlin has one.
I have 2, actually. The first one is on your slide that shows the quarterly franchise fee. You have $82. You might want to consider making that $82K.
Yes, $82K,
or
yes.
else adding the extra zeros, just as you suggested on that one.
Yes.
And then the other question I have is, I know, and I'm really glad that you're upgrading the Goodwin Forum. That's wonderful. What about Fowler over in West Concord? What about Harvey Wheeler Center? Do you have any plans in upgrading those for audio and visual?
Harvey Wheeler, yes. We have been in discussions with Dan there, the director. We do have a quote in front of us, and we are discussing upgrading the equipment there. Fowler, to be honest, we do not get requests to film there. It's always the Goodwin Forum.
Well, is that because you don't have equipment there? That's why you don't get requests? I mean, chicken and the egg, which one comes first? If you put the equipment in Fowler, you might get more requests for video there. So it's a consideration to think about, that's all.
Definitely, definitely.
Okay.
We can consider doing that. We'd be happy to do that.
Good, thank you.
I don't see any questions, any other questions from the Finance Committee here. Anything online? Brian, Pat? Nope. Any questions in the room? One from Chris.
Chris Reynolds, Captain Miles Lane. When you take a look at revenue, given the risk of folks cutting the cable, do you do a projection to figure out how much that licensing fee from Comcast could reduce in the future? Oh, so you're making an assumption around the number of households you're going to have. People are kind of going the other way.
Right.
So how do you deal with that in your future projections?
Chris, could you just...
I think the question is, how do we deal with households that are doing cable cutting. So the good news is it really hasn't gone down much in Concord. We've been very lucky. It's a steady number. But the way we're going to address that is because of the Comcast, the new contract, we're now actually getting more payment from Comcast that we did in the past. But it is the fate of what's happening. People are cutting cable and going to streaming. The way we're addressing it in terms of viewership is that we are now streaming. So you can watch us on Apple TV, on your phones, on Roku. That's how we're keeping our viewers watching us.
I think Lindsay has a question.
Yeah, sorry. So kind of along the same lines, if you showed us that capital costs or expenditures are going to go down next year by 100,000, you'll still will have your revenue below your expenses if expenses stay the same, because we're short about almost 200,000 right now, right?
Right.
So is that, do you have plans to address that, or will we use this special fund to kind of bridge the gap indefinitely?
Well, some plans would be trying to come up with new revenue streams, fundraising, and then, if necessary, lowering our expenses.
Paul Bohm, Select Board, 11 Ridgewood Road. I'm following up on the other revenue streams. You have such an amazing operation. I can imagine there'd be external demands. Have you given thought to other external revenue streams in the future?
Yes, some external revenue streams would be teaching classes, having the community come to our studio, learning camera production, photography, and then fundraising. And then another thing would maybe becoming membership-based, where you'd have paid members, or maybe seeking sponsorships for some of our programs, sponsorships for events that we film. So other stations are doing things like that.
I am not seeing any other questions in the room and nothing online. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
We will next be hearing on Article 29. Is someone presenting on that?
Good evening, Alan Cathcart, Director of Concord Public Works. Very good. Let me see if I advance this. Perfect. Okay, thank you. So this is an article that you may recall we had sort of discussed last year. This is a process that's evolved a little bit. In essence, there was a petition received from a neighborhood in specific owners of property in the White Pond neighborhood. I'll show you just to locate you. White Pond is a fairly unusual neighborhood. A lot of small lots, predated, subdivision rules and regulations. A lot of the ways here are private, and because of that, historically, there's been some real challenges when they need to go about doing improvements or replacements of roadways and drainage. So there was a bylaw established by town enabling the community to assist with an understanding that the design and construction and all costs relating to the projects would be vetted through the Public Works Commission. Betterments would be assessed to ensure that the costs were borne by those properties that received the improvements. So it's really just a vehicle to allow this sort of unusual neighborhood to advance projects that are very difficult to do with just getting individuals to try and partner for fairly significant investments. You can see White Pond is the blue water body to the northwest here. Actually an important resource to the community. You can see the figure on the right, the shaded area is the kind of limit of work, those properties that are directly abutting the request for what we call temporary improvements. Why? Well, they have some outstanding, fairly significant challenges with drainage management in that neighborhood. It actually sort of becomes sort of a pool effect during extreme rainfall and snowmelt events. This is the intersection of Darton and Dutton Street. Part of the problem is, as you get this fairly frequent flooding, you also have a very aggressive environment for pavement condition and roadway condition, so the road is significantly deteriorated at a pretty significant rate. So in essence, the process, as I mentioned, is something that's formalized through a petition that is submitted for review through the Public Works Commission. Our engineering division reviews it. In this particular case, there was an original request. After serious consideration, staff volunteered some possible improvements. The project was expanded from the original petition to try and address sort of a long-term stormwater challenge. It's fairly complex in that neighborhood. The cost at that time to do a complete, what we would do on a public way, was fairly significant. The abutters were not quite comfortable with trying to bear the entire cost at that point, so we revisited the design over the past year. We've been able to sort of modify it, so it's a good plan. We've had support through the town to do some of that design work, and we now have a project that seems to be right-sized and acceptable to a majority of the abutters. You can see the probable cost estimate's about $195,000. The actual limit of work this is sort of a little bit more of kind of a preliminary design showing the area of Darton Street, which is kind of shaded in the center, with some improvements along Dover as well. But it's interesting where usually it's pavement that is the primary draw for the neighborhood to sort of unite and see what the town can do to help. But in this case, it was the stormwater challenge, which was particularly interesting. So at this point, we're going to town meeting because the nature of the project is we're looking at somewhere around $15,000 per unit for a betterment to be assessed. The town becomes, in essence, the project manager. We would go out, complete the design, procure the service, oversee the construction, and all those costs would be then assessed through the betterment. The mechanics of that need to be ironed out, with the individual owners before we proceed with the project, but this is just to enable us to have the funding and financing. So the town becomes the financing vehicle, and Public Works becomes the arm to try and see the implementation through. In essence, that's the presentation.
Questions? Don?
Alan, first, can I assume the Public Works Commission recommends approval?
Yes, I'm sorry to say that's
okay.
true. They did a formal recommendation, yes.
Second, over what period will it be repaid? What are the sort of repayment terms of the betterment?
We don't anticipate anything longer than a 10-year term. Again, $15,000 is what it's be equally apportioned for the 13 parcels. The town is one of them and will actually be participating in that. Mm-hmm. So we anticipate a 10-year term, and we will make the option available so that they can pay up front. Some may opt just to do a one-time payment.
Does it become a lien on
Yes,
the
it could be liened, yes.
Okay. And then lastly, where does the water go in this design?
It's interesting. The design, I won't spend, if we can get back on to the, give us one sec to see the actual screen. Okay. So if you sort of accept north is to the top of the plan, if you go to the east, you'll see this interesting depression, and not everybody can read the same map, but it says Shore Drive. Between Shore Drive and Darton, there's this interesting depression. And we were looking originally to have the stormwater get captured in a conventional way through are leaching catch basins that then are connected through pipes, like the stormwater system, that would be directed and then discharged to that particular depression. That was the more expensive, elaborate project. We tailored it back, so right now what you have is leaching catch basins. There are 4 of them that connect into a perforated pipe, so it can leach into the ground, and it can receive the water without direct discharge. We've designed it so that it could be modified in the future, where if we needed to proceed and go and the neighborhood decided they wanted to connect that last manhole into that depression, that's an option that we left open.
The French strain.
It's a French strain, yes.
Which was invented in Concord, by the way.
Yes, by Daniel Chester French's father.
That's right, yeah.
The sculptor.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Carla?
So that was a good one, Alan. I like that. As a follow-up, bring in French in. As a follow-up, is this similar to when you have a septic system replaced and you have a betterment assessed onto your property tax, and then you pay it off over a certain period of time? Is it run pretty much the same way when the town does this sort of thing?
I don't deal with that program, so I'm not exactly sure with the septic system betterment, but I would imagine it's similar.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Jennifer's saying yes. So a fee would appear on these 13 parcel homeowners' bills, and they'd pay it as part of their assessment. Okay, thank you.
So there is no ultimate cost to the taxpayer on this?
That's correct, other than our participation in the parcel that we own as well.
Right. Okay. Any questions online from Finance Committee members? Okay. Any questions or comments in the room?
Carmen Reese, 52 Devon Street, Town Moderator, but this is a question for Alan, and that is, the presentation mentioned that that White's Pond is a valuable resource and a valuable town resource. I'm just wondering whether this project has a benefit for White's Pond.
The answer is yes. To what degree, I don't really know, but the stormwater management here is equally important as we have across the town. And so any treatment of that water where it goes into the ground will be beneficial. One of the other issues that's very important that was raised during the review is the public health risks to the neighborhood as they're walking through the standing water. That area is not sewered, a lot of septic systems and that sort of thing. So there is an environmental benefit. I can't quantify exactly how much, and also a public health benefit.
Any other questions? Okay, then I think we can move on to Article 48. The Beatty Fitness Center. We need more podiums.
Okay. Hello, good evening. My name is Lee Jackson. I am the Recreation Director here in town. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. I'm here and joined by Jessica Porter, the Assistant Town Manager, and also Jenny Sicardo is here to answer question. She is our BD answer questions. She's our BD General Manager. Our mission at Concord Recreation is to support and promote community through wellness and play. And tonight we're here to talk about BD Swim and Fitness. So here's our motion. I will read you a portion of it. Mr. Griffiths moves to appropriate $2,938,678.94 in enterprise fund receipts and transfer $1,170,000 from certified retained earnings as of June 30th, 2025,
for a total appropriation of $4,108,678.94 for the community pool enterprise for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2027. I want to start by just sharing a few accomplishments we had in FY26. This is harder than I thought. Okay. We went above and beyond our fun and energizing wellness programs in 26, and we've successfully achieved the outcomes that we set out for our goals. We created a financial sustainability model to support the BD Swim and Fitness Center for the foreseeable future. We engaged our community in wellness and play initiatives, including our open house that we did this year. We're offering free Zumba classes periodically. We have a fitness scavenger hunt planned for late this month or early next, and we are doing a marathon month in April. And finally, we created our first department-wide recruitment, retention, and development plan for our staff. So on to to 27. So here in FY27, our budget goals are in concept only. We currently have it in committee with our employees who will decide the specific actions for these goals. But we will absolutely implement the financial sustainability model we created in 26. We will intentionally invest and improve quality across the department by picking a particular program. This year in FY26, we selected Carousel. We are going to create and implement specific engagement activities to engage our community related, the same as this year, wellness and play, to align with our mission. And we're going to implement the plan we created this year in FY26 to recruit, retain, and develop our staff. Now to the exciting part, FY27 budget. So I'm going to define some of the categories for you because they're a little bit vague. The swim initiation fees are our joining fees at BD. And you can see that our budget for the swim initiation fee is $12,000 for FY27. Our yearly membership fees for revenue, that is our full payment plan, meaning people who join BD and they pay all at once. So that's the revenue we project for that area, and that's $150,000. You can also join BD monthly. So we have our monthly membership fees, so we project that in revenue generated for people paying monthly membership plans. Our rental revenues are created for us to offset, obviously, the expense to join BD Swim and Fitness. We use facility use agreements, and we've projected $130,000 in revenue for FY27. Our miscellaneous revenue includes guest fees and revenue generated from our 10 Punch Fitness Pass program. I want to continue with the revenue projected for FY27. Our swim program fees are our swim lessons. We have an otter swim program. We have a master's program, and also our BD swim birthday parties. So that's what is in that category. Our SFC fitness program is, in fact, revenue from personal training at BD Swim and Fitness, and we project that at $120,000 for revenue in 27. Our fitness program fees that you see, the $84,000 we project for land and water fitness program classes. And lastly, our investment income is our percent interest expected from our retained earnings. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Jess Porter to talk to you a little bit about our expenses.
Thank you, Lee. So Jess Porter, Assistant Town Manager. So the expenses you see on the screen, the non-program operating expenses are projected at $2,125,878.94. Expenses for group fitness in the area of aquatics is $68,000. Aquatic safety management is coming in at $432,000. And then other aquatic programming expenses are projected at $220,500. Continuing with expenses, for fitness management, the land-based is $31,000. Personal training expense coming in at $58,800. And special event programming is $2,500. And you'll see that the expenses totaled the $2,938,678.94, which is a balanced budget going into fiscal '27. And you'll see that illustrated here on the slide that shows the revenue and expense side by side. You see the fees and rentals at the $2.732 million. The interest income all totals up. And then on the expense side, you see the personnel expenses, the purchase services, supplies, materials, other expenses, and our capital outlay, which shows and illustrates, again, the balanced projected budget for '27. And these are just some pie charts to show that and another visual aspect for you. And the last slide, I believe it's the last slide we want to show you, is just some information on our BD membership. This shows the different age bucket categories and the percentage of memberships within each category. So you can see we continue to have some fairly high numbers in the 51 plus category, but we are still holding steady with our membership figures for the under 51 age group as well. And this is just our last motion slide again. Are there any questions?
Let's start in the room. Any questions from anybody in the room? Anyone from the Finance Committee? I see no hands. Carlin?
There's one.
Oh, there is? Oh, there's one online. Okay, Pat, please go ahead.
Thank you. Can you, thank you very much for the presentation. Would you give the audience an idea of the percent increase, decrease in revenue expenditures for your projection versus last year?
I think it's about 2.5% over last year.
Thank you.
I do have a question.
Carlin has a question?
Yeah.
So, and then do you?
Lee, when you're looking at your slides, you might consider rounding everything to the nearest dollar, because having that 94 cents looks kind of weird compared to the 000, so just a suggestion.
Thank you, Carlin. I will do so.
Okay.
And Lindsay, you had a question?
Yeah, and to Pat's point, I think showing at least FY26 with FY27 will give people context. Can you talk about and what's happened with membership trends too?
Would you like to? Yeah, sure. Jenny Sicardo, General Manager. So I would say the membership trends are pretty steady. I will say we have a lot of people that tend to do drop-in rather than committing to an annual membership. We see a lot of people that just pay a daily drop-in and maybe go somewhere else. And then I would say the 3-month membership is very popular as well.
Who has their hand? Brian, did you have a question?
My question was also membership trends, so I think that was addressed. I was wondering, do you see it like it? It seems like the membership is the 3-month membership is very seasonal, with winter being more popular. Is there any thoughts on like how to increase the membership during like the summer months?
It's definitely a good question. We do see a lot of people that like to swim in open water during the summer, so we are competing against White Pond, Walden Pond, and so we do try to increase our rentals during the summer months for local swim teams and summer camps.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you talk about the retained earning transfer and what that's going to be used for? And I think it would be helpful to have it in the presentation for town meeting. And then can you also talk about the balance of the retained earnings?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Great questions. Our transfer of $1,170,000 is for our capital plan. I did try to get it on slides. We have too many capital projects to fit the 20 font, so I didn't get it on, but I'm happy to read them if you'd like. Would you? Okay. Very well. So we have a wall repair of the natatorium in 27. We have an expansion feasibility study for BD Swim and Fitness Center to add on the hard foundation. We have a parking lot patching and partial repaving, an external risk management analysis, a replacement of domestic hot water system, cardio room flooring, upper lower lobby and office carpet, interior painting throughout BD facility, pool pump and motors for all pools, deck equipment, annual recurring valve and plumbing for the natatorium, miscellaneous building improvements that are unplanned. We have miscellaneous pumps and motors in the natatorium, and we have a replacement for cardio equipment. And then there was another question.
And the balance of retained earnings?
Oh, the balance for retained earnings was $4,334,000, and that was certified for 2025.
Okay. And sorry, can I? Oh, yeah. Go ahead. And can you talk about, have you been dipping into retained earnings the last few years? It's my recollection that the answer is yes, but.
Slightly, I think yes. I'm going to let Jenny answer this one because we've moved it around.
So we do have a planned roof replacement for this year for about $1 million. So that would be the big ticket item for this year, and then just for some smaller items, but nothing major.
Or I guess the question was more in the past few years. Can you refresh my memory if we've been, as retained earnings just been going down? That's
it's
my
just been going up. We really haven't tapped into
okay,
it that much in my time here, yes.
Okay, thanks.
I had a question, and let me get, you made a reference in one of the slides to the financial sustainability project model, but am I missing details in the slides about what that means?
I did not put what it means in the slides. I'd be happy to add it if you think it'd be good for the town meeting. I will talk to you about it. We are doing a full cost recovery model for all of recreation. That means the revolving fund and the enterprise fund. We've hired an outside consultant to do that work with us. It was an FY26 budget. We're underway right now. And it'll go into effect in FY27.
I think it's useful information for us. It gives
Thank
us
you.
a sense of where things are going, in addition to the snapshot about where things are. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. Brian, do you have another question?
One last question. Do you do any analysis on how competitive BD is versus the, sort of private options like the Row Club or other options for fitness around our town and nearby?
Got you, Julie.
I'll start with the answer, and I'm going to pass it to Jenny. Jenny's a resident too, and so knows a little bit more about the local environment and the market. I'll tell you that because we operate in a general fund, some of our peers do not, right? They operate with the general fund support, and so comparing us is somewhat difficult on the finance side, but not on the program side. So let me pass it to Jenny.
I would say the only other thing that would be competitive here would be the Thoreau Club, and we are priced very differently. I would say a monthly membership at the Thoreau Club is about $300, and that's the cost of a 3-month membership for us. So there's some similarities, but when you go to the Thoreau Club, everything is included. All the fitness classes are included, and when you go to BD, you're going to pay for those separately. You're paying for your membership, which gives you access to the swimming pools and to the fitness center, but all additional classes you're paying for separately. But there's not really much other local competition. Maybe the YMCA and Waltham would be the closest, Anytime Fitness. But you're looking at just straight up fitness facilities without any swimming pool. We're definitely a gem in the community when it comes to swimming pools. Sudbury has the Atkinson's pool. They're having some hardship right now, and they're seeing a lot of closures due to some facility issues. But I don't see much other local competition at the time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, it's a great resource for the community.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions in the room? And I see none, and I see none online. Thank you very much. We are down to our last article of the night, which brings Jennifer to the podium. And these are the revolving fund expenditures.
Article 39 asks town meeting to authorize the annual expenditure limits for the town's revolving funds established under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53E and 1/2, as printed in the warrant. This vote is required each year to allow departments to spend from these revolving accounts. Revolving funds under MGL 4453E1/2 must have an annual not-to-exceed budget authorized by town meeting. Article 39 seeks approval of the annual spending limits for 6 existing revolving funds that support programs across several departments. The 6 revolving funds and their proposed spending limits for the coming year are as follows: ambulance, $1 million, regional housing services, $400,000, road repair, $120,000, senior services, $50,000, tree preservation, $50,000, and visitor center and tourism, $100,000. These amounts represent the maximum expenditures allowed from each fund for one fiscal year. They're consistent with last year's warrant requests. Revolving funds are supported by fees, fines, or donations associated with a specific service. Rather than going to the general fund, these revenues stay with the program to support its operations. Spending from the revolving fund supplements departmental budgets and allows the town to offer services that are funded in part by user revenue. If you need an example of what some of these services or support expenses are, they're on the screen. I think they're fairly self-explanatory. And that's about it. This is an evergreen item that we have to do every year according to our bylaws.
Questions?
Okay. Remember this, you should have a consent calendar.
The ambulance fund, do you see a time in the future when you'll need to spend more than $1 million?
I would leave that to the fire chief's purview, but at the moment, we receive about $1 million annually. Once our advanced life support is progressed to daily use, we will probably see more income than that. Once the income rises, we may have an opportunity to spend more. I know that in the capital plan for next year, there is 1 ambulance funded through this revolving fund.
Any other questions? Don?
The Regional Housing Services Fund, what is the source of those funds?
I don't know.
Okay.
Is it state reimbursement?
It might be.
Can we?
I do know that last year, this warrant, this amount was amended in the motion, but the warrant itself was the 400, so I will reach out to somebody to find out if we do need to increase that in the motion itself.
If you could repeat the question, maybe I could help out.
Don's question was,
Sure.
Where are the revenues for the
where are
regional housing
revenues
services
that
from?
come in to
For the Regional Housing Services Fund, the source of the revenues?
Yeah, so the revenues are, it's a membership-based service. The revenues are coming from the member communities, and they're deposited into the revolving fund, and expenses coming out of the revolving fund.
Oh.
Any other questions from the Finance Committee? Anyone online? Pat, Brian? No. Okay, I see a question in the room.
Hi, Wendy Ravelli, Select Board member, and I think I'm asking this question on behalf of the Select Board. We have historically had a presentation for the Concord Recreation Department, which I understood was a revolving fund. And so maybe you could just clarify, is it a revolving fund, and why are we not reviewing or approving those expenditures? You get it.
The Recreation Fund is a revolving fund, but it is not under Massachusetts General Law 4453E and a half. It is a specific Mass General Law that supports just recreation funds, and that particular law does not require us to approve or set a budget. They are welcome to use whatever funds they have on hand for their operations.
If I could just add, I think it was probably a couple of years ago, the Finance Committee questioned that and suggested that maybe we forego that presentation.
Any other questions? I am seeing no hands online and no questions in the room. So thank you, Jennifer. That is the last article we were scheduled to hear tonight. So I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved. Okay, so Paul moved the motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second? Second. Gerard has the second. Any other discussion? No. All right, this is the roll call to close the public hearing. Brian Conway.
Yes.
John Garofalo.
Yes.
Pat Geyer.
Yes.
Gerard Jansen.
Yes.
Don Kupka.
Yes.
Lindsay Liss.
Yes.
Carlin Reed, yes. Paul Rodriguez.
Yes.
Lois Wassoff.
Yes.
Okay, my count is 9-0-0-9 yes, 0 no, no abstention. Gerard, do you have the same count?
Yes.
All right, the motion passes.
We can,
Great.
Please, 5 minutes.
so we are now going to reopen the Finance Committee meeting.
Quick break.
We can go straight ahead or take a short
Can
break.
we take a short break, please? Yeah.
Yeah, we can take a short break. I just want to remind everybody, we're in session, so we're taking a short break, but let's have our conversations in our public meeting, okay? But let's take a for real 5-minute break, okay? So we're on break.
Yes, they're simply separate entities. They're community center had its own creation through donation. It's kept separate. The finances are maintained separately from tennis.
Okay, we are reconvened. And our mission tonight is to consider what we've heard, have discussion about the articles that we think need additional discussion, and then, where appropriate, take our votes. I'm going to begin by saying that we had 2 articles left from the prior 2 hearings, Article 11 and Article 12.
Do we need to call us together?
What?
Do we need to reconvene?
No, I don't think we are.
Okay.
We don't need another roll.
Cool.
No,
Not
we're reconvened. So we have 2 articles outstanding from prior hearings. With respect to Article 11, the Finance Department has information ready that will address the questions that were asked, which basically had to do with whether the proposed capital plan that we're considering complied with the town's financial policies on debt. That presentation, I think, is better done at a meeting. And we do have one more meeting next Thursday night before we have to finalize our recommendations. So I'd like to defer that. And I'd also like to share with everybody that I heard from Mark Howell about the presentation on Article 12, which is the money for planning for municipal facilities. And he's putting together some additional information that is responsive to the specific questions that we asked. And so we can discuss Article 12 further at our March 19th meeting. So and I'll make another comment that we don't have the minutes, correct, Carlin? To vote on.
Sorry. Yes.
So we can skip over that. And we will be voting on the minutes for March 10th and March 12th at our March 19th meeting. So let's review together the articles we have heard. And I think let's proceed the way we did last night. Are there articles that people would like to highlight for further discussion before we consider proceeding to a vote? Would it be helpful if I read off the articles that we've heard? Article 40 was the light plant. Article 41 was stormwater. Article 43, solid waste. Article 44, sewer system. Article 45, sewer improvement. Article 46, water system expenditures. Article 47, PEG access and Minuteman Media. Article 29 was the betterments in the White Pond area. Article 48 was the BD Swim and Fitness Center. And Article 39 was the authorization of the revolving fund expenditures. So, are any of those that we feel we're not ready to?
Pat has her hand up.
Pat, go right ahead.
Thank you. So I don't want to belabor it, but the stormwater, Article 41, I feel like there's no plan. We're collecting fees. I heard the word stormwater on the Dalton Street issues. I don't understand what the roads are versus stormwater. I'm concerned about, again, we approved an enterprise fund. We're collecting fees, and I feel like there's no plan.
All right, let's put a pin in Article 41, and we can talk about that. Anything else that people want to talk further about? I want to raise a question about whether or not we want to seek some additional information from the BD fund, from the Recreation Department, before we have a vote. What's the feeling about that?
Yes.
Yeah, so why don't let's defer our discussion on that article for the moment, and I think we can define. Gerard, what's your thoughts?
Go back to the light plant expenditures.
Yes?
On the telecommunications, I do not understand that revenue and net income number at all.
You don't understand? I'm sorry, George, say again.
The revenue and the net income number. I'd like more detail on that before I vote.
Okay.
So that was Article 40?
Yes.
That's Article 40.
So 40 would need, we're pulling off 40, 41, and 48 at this point?
Yes. So it's 40, 41, and 48 are the articles that we think we may need some more information about. I just want to remind everybody, we got to vote. We got to make a decision on, at our meeting next Thursday. We do have the option of deferring to town meeting, to not take a vote either way and defer our vote to town meeting. I would like to avoid that. I think getting our recommendations into the report gives people more time to consider them, and generally makes things go a lot more smoothly. If we are prepared to come to a vote, I'd rather, but we'll see. We'll see how the discussion goes.
Can I ask that we discuss the light plant rather than just pushing it off? Because I think that there is some discussion that we could have here before.
Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely. I'm just trying to tease out the ones that we want to
that's great.
dig into, as opposed to ones that we might feel comfortable taking a vote on now.
100%. I just want to make sure that we don't just avoid voting.
Yeah, I hear you,
for the
and I
sake of
agree.
that.
Yeah, I agree.
Brian has his hand up.
Brian?
Yeah, this is a more general comment. You know, it would probably be helpful for the town meeting that all of these enterprise funds have their current cash, like total cash, what what reserve funds there are, and a trend line on where they have been. I think that question was asked on most of these articles, and I don't think any of the articles presented that very clearly, what their actual true reserves are.
Yeah, that's a good observation. I don't know that needs to be in the town meeting presentation. The information is available in the budget books.
Yes, it is.
That are online.
And it will also be in the Finance Committee report, too. We already.
And it will be in the Finance Committee report. So I'm not sure that is necessary in each instance, Brian. You remember at town meeting, first of all, Madam Moderator, a lot of these articles about the enterprise funds do end up on the consent calendar, do they not?
That's my question.
Carmen Reese, Town Moderator. I will be discussing a proposed consent calendar with the Select Board at their meeting. Is it next Monday or? No, I'm not sure. The next Select Board meeting. I'll be discussing it with them. I anticipate proposing all of the enterprise funds except for stormwater for the consent calendar.
And that's consistent with historical practice. That's my recollection. Okay.
If I could add that the practice for the last several years with respect to enterprise funds, they are very routine. That doesn't mean that individual funds don't have something unusual happening in a particular year. And for the past several years, at 5, 7, 8 years, the practice has been to make sure we pull one of those out for a full presentation and discussion at town meeting, regardless of whether there's anything unusual going on, because the information that's presented on all these enterprise funds at these hearings is rich and useful and important to the community, and the hearings are very under-attended, and so it's quite, town meeting's the best platform for people to hear about and see pictures and ask questions.
Yeah. And understand what an enterprise fund is, because it's not intuitive unless
Right,
you've
exactly,
been paying
exactly.
attention to it.
And right now, I think that the Stormwater Enterprise Fund is the newest fund. It is the one that people have the most questions about. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily controversial, but has generated more questions and uncertainty than the other funds. So that to me feels like the fund we should be talking about at town meeting this year.
But I would make a point, and I'm not questioning that. But I'd make a point in reference to what Pat said, that the enterprise funds, the light plant, for example, and the stormwater fund, and they have their own rate-setting boards. So when
They do.
when you're asking questions about understanding why a particular rate has been set, we've all been on the town website. We know how many boards and committees there are in town, some with overlapping responsibilities, most with their own specific charges that don't overlap. So there are other citizens' eyes and ears being engaged in making those decisions like the rate setting.
That's certainly true. The light plant sets rates. The Public Works Commission sets rates for both the sewer rates and others as well, water rates and so forth. The Recreation Commission oversees BD Center and what the rec department is doing. So there certainly are other, and the sewer is overseen by Public Works as well. And those are all public meetings, and they happen regularly, so folks who are interested can certainly pay attention there if they like. And there is certainly some community oversight for...
and that's the point. There is other community oversight.
Yeah.
So the rates alone are not necessarily a reason for us, in my view, and there may be different views on this. If the issue is just with the rates alone, that's not a reason to separate out a fund. But I do think that we are entitled to ask other questions about the budget, the revenues, the expenses, and we are entitled to ask for more information if we feel we haven't gotten enough information through these hearings. So.
Yeah, well, I think one of the distinctions is that town meeting doesn't have authority over the rates. The rates are set by the governing boards and committees who are in charge of the rates. So, but what town meeting has authority over is the overall approval of the budget. So if there were, for example, serious question about what a future capital plan was or something like that, town meeting could vote with its pocketbook and decide that it wasn't going to approve the proposed budget. But it can't change rates.
Right, exactly. And we are a creature of town meeting. Our job is to advise town meeting.
Yes, yes, you are town meeting's sole advisor.
Yep, eyes and ears. All right, so let's, why don't we look over the articles that have not, we've identified as not needing, at least initially not wanting to hear further information about. Are we prepared to vote on recommending action on solid waste, sewer system, sewer improvement fund, water system expenditures, the PEG access and Minuteman media? So
there are 7 articles you're talking about,
One,
numbers
2, 3,
43,
4,
44, 45, 46, 47, 29, and 39.
Are we comfortable also voting on Article 29, which is an article that actually does not have any, the White Pond betterments that don't have any
Yeah,
questions?
I'm not comfortable with 40. It's okay, I'll dig into it.
No, 40's not in that list. I've left out 40, 41,
and 48.
And 48 for the time being.
Well,
okay.
I'm fine with 40, so we can add it to the voting tonight.
You say again, Gerard. I'm sorry.
I'm okay with 40. I don't have any more questions, so if you want to vote on it tonight, it's fine with me.
Oh, you are fine with 40?
Yeah, I'm fine with 40.
Is the general consensus that we're comfortable voting on 40 as well, the light plan?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, that's good.
So what?
And Pat, you raised the question about stormwater system. Are you comfortable voting on the stormwater article?
I know how I'm going to vote. So if you'd like to proceed, great.
Why don't we do a separate vote on that? So now we're talking about, I would be asking for a motion to recommend affirmative action on Article 40, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 29, which is the White Pond article. Are we also comfortable including in that the authorization of the revolving funds, Article 39?
Yes.
Which is a housekeeping article, essentially.
Are you going to do them all together? Do you want one motion for all of them?
Yeah, I think we can just do that.
So
and then we
moved.
can-
Please.
Paul just made the motion.
Paul did, okay. So Paul made a motion for affirmative actions for number 40, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 29, and 39. That was Paul's motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Who's that?
Gerard.
Gerard, okay, and
Thank
then
you,
Gerard
Gerard.
did the second for that same motion.
Okay.
Any other
Do we have
discussion?
any further discussion, or should we call the roll?
Okay.
Let's call the roll.
All right, this is the roll call for affirmative action on Articles 40, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 29, and 39. Brian Conway,
Yes?
John Garofalo,
Yes.
Pat Geyer,
Yes.
Gerard Jansen,
Yes.
Don Kupka,
Yes.
Lindsay Liss,
Yes.
Carlin Reed, yes. Paul Rodriguez,
Yes.
Lois Wassoff.
Yes.
Okay, I have a count of 9 yes, 0 no, 0 abstention. Gerard, do you match for that?
Yes.
All right, the motion passes for those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 articles.
Great. So that leaves us 2 articles that we heard tonight that we, let's talk about them briefly, see whether we can take a vote tonight or whether we want to hold them. Let's start with the stormwater system expenditures. Pat?
Yes, I'll speak. I think we first voted, the town voted on creating the enterprise fund. And I remember last time when we were discussing this last year, we agreed, and Carmen spoke up, in fact, on this, that that's what we were voting on, creating the enterprise fund. That got approved. But now we're getting assessed fees. And we knew that was going to happen last year, but I still don't hear a plan. And then when I heard about the betterment in the White Pond area, I heard the word stormwater over and over again. And so now I'm like, what is stormwater and what are the roads, right? Because roads have stormwater, sidewalk has stormwater. I think the fact that I don't hear a distinct plan as to where the fees are going, I hear sort of nebulous stuff about how we have to staff up before we can have a plan. That's disturbing to me.
Sven, would you like to make a comment?
Yes, Sven Weaver, 50 Belknap Street, member of the Public Works Commission, and talking on my own behalf but filling in the holes here because I presented both the original authorization request for the bylaw and last year's budget. Just to be clear, the bylaw was authorized 2 years ago, and the initial budget was authorized last year, subject to fee income. The fees started this February. So this is where now the Stormwater Enterprise started to spend the money. This enterprise fund couldn't spend any money until the fee kicked in. So we are just now literally 6 weeks or 8 weeks into the current operation of the enterprise fund. The proposal that you have in front of you for the future fiscal year is literally the same budget, just a little bit time shifted, that was proposed last year. no increase. The Public Works Commission is not scheduled to increase the fees, so that stays stable. And the budget, if you look back to last year, is literally the same budget. And there is a plan behind these different buckets, which we outlined last year. That it's, to be clear, is what the relationship is to the betterment question is on the White Pond is Stormwater Enterprise is dealing just with public roads and public right-of-way. The situation on White Pond is this is private property, where the private owners ask Public Works to do work on their behalf. And the policy is, and there is a very policy from, I don't know, 1960 something, is that if Public Works agrees, and if Public Works Commission agrees to take this work on, the cost is assigned to the owners of the private property. This is not flowing through the enterprise fund for stormwater. This is not flowing through the general fund. This is not touching the taxpayer or the fee payers. This is purely outside of what is done there. So just we have to separate these two things: is private property work for financed by betterment, and the other one is the stormwater system that literally now just started in February.
Thank you. That was very helpful. Don?
Yeah, don't go away, son. Thanks for that. You'll recall that my concern was that if we're going to spend $1 million, we should get $1 million worth of work done. And what I've seen so far, and it's early days, is that 14% is going to billing and general fund indirect costs. So that's $140,000 that's not going into work. And 34%, that is $340,000, is going into work. That's the cleaning of the storm drains and infrastructure improvements. My question was about the rest of it, because there was some for engineering, some for, a lot of categories, and one for other professional services. Is there a project plan that says we're going to spend $560,000 this year, and that's going to result in $1 million of work for each of the next 8 years, or something like that?
So just going back, so the billing is, most of that is initial setup cost. So the billing going forward will be much less, yeah. And we use the same system for now all our different enterprise systems. That's also why we migrated for our waste and recycling program also to the same system, so that we are not duplicating and have different billing systems. So just take the billing as a separate one, so that percentage will go down over time. Second, there's a lot of catch-up around the MS4 compliance to be done, where we need consultants and be able to answer the questions we get around that, and build additional plans. We have already plans and where to focus on, but we have to address the requirements for the permits that are right now getting in our way. So there will be over time a shift from consultant work to actual work. Yeah. But that needs to be done. And as Steve Duckran pointed out, in the past we had sporadic budgets of 50,000 there, 75,000 there, that were just not enough even to build out a plan. So now we are in a situation, we are collecting the fees, now we have the money to build out the plan and get into MS4 compliance, and we are already in, but the new requirements need to be fulfilled. So it was a chicken and egg we were running for several years, that we need to build a plan, but there was no money for a plan. Yeah?
Thanks, that makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah. And I also do want to make the point, I mean, this was a controversial proposal when it was made, and there were strong views on various sides, but town meeting authorized it 2 years ago. So It exists as a separate enterprise fund. It has presented us with a budget that shows revenue and expenses. The rates are set by a separate rate-setting body. We should focus on doing our job, which is reviewing this presentation, this budget proposal, and recommending affirmative action or not, but we shouldn't relitigate the underlying question of whether or not there should be a stormwater fund, because there is, and town meeting did. So I just don't want to, I'm not suggesting we are, but I don't want to go down that path. I know I'm not suggesting you are, but this is a startup fund, and I think we should consider the information in front of us.
And I have another piece to add on that. I'm in favor of affirmative action on this article. Partially, it helps that having a former Finance Committee chair as a member of the Public Works Commission, and having watched the meetings as the liaison for the Public Works Commission, I've watched Christine Reynolds grill the rest of the commissioners and the staff on the dollar amounts. So I have a lot of confidence in the financial aspects of this particular article.
I want to say I'm in favor of the article as well. I simply wanted to give the opportunity for a better explanation.
And I appreciate your questions, because I think they help our understanding. And I think your questions and Sven's answers really advance the conversation. So I'm glad you asked them, and I'm glad that Sven was here to give us the additional information. So I'm going to ask if someone would like to make a motion to vote for affirmative action on Article 41, which is the stormwater system expenditures.
Yeah. I move that we recommend affirmative action on Article 41.
I'll second that one.
Is there any further discussion? Pat or Brian? I see no hands. Madam Clerk, could we proceed to a roll call vote?
Sure. This is the roll call on the vote on affirmative action for Article 41. Brian Conway.
Yes.
John Garofalo.
Yes.
Pat Geyer.
No.
Okay. Gerard Jansen.
Yes.
Don Kupka.
Yes.
Lindsay Liss.
Yes.
Carlin Reed, yes. Paul Rodriguez.
Yes.
Lois Wassoff.
Yes.
Okay, by my count, that is 8 yes, 1 no, no abstentions. Gerard, do you have the same count?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have one remaining article from tonight's hearing, and that is the BD Swim and Fitness Center Enterprise Fund expenditures. I'll just kick it off. I don't feel that the presentation gave us some information I would have liked to see. I don't know if that means that the article, we shouldn't recommend affirmative action on the article, but I would feel better if we knew things like the balance of their retained earnings and some of the specifics of their expenditures. I just felt that the presentation didn't focus on the things I would have liked to see. And I think, we asked the questions. I don't know if we need to wait for the answers. Paul, what's your thought?
Carlin, maybe you could remind me. I tend to remember that you asked these questions last year and suggested that this information was presented to us this year that wasn't presented to solve some of these uncertainties. And I kind of agree, Lois, that it would be, looking at the long-term health, just based on the information that was presented, they need to be able to live for a couple of years, and I don't know if that's certain. So based on the information that we have in front of us. Now, if there was a trend line and everything like that, and we could see that, yes, there is a plan to have, a long-term, survivability, then absolutely, I would vote yes. But I do have that level of uncertainty.
Or just point out, to your point earlier, all this is in the budget book, But the things that aren't in the budget book were things around like what is the, the capital expenditures that they requested, what were they for? They told us a little bit about that tonight. The membership trends by those buckets, I think those are kind of important. Are people just buying day passes more now than they, what they're more stable revenue streams like the memberships, what's happening with that, what's happening with their programming, some of those things that you can't see in the budget book were what was really missing for me.
I would agree that it wasn't, it could have been more clear. I think the enterprise fund balance, et cetera, is in the budget book. But I got from the presentation that revenue equals expense. But from the budget book, it looks as if there's a big deficit because the expense line is much higher than the revenue because they're not, the budget book doesn't show the transfer from the enterprise retained earnings. So that would be a bit of feedback. I can put the two together in my head, but I don't think that anyone who didn't attend, who had only the budget book or only the slides would be able to do that. Yeah. So, yeah.
I'd be kind of curious, John, to see if you have an opinion on this, because you're the liaison to the Recreation Commission. Any ideas?
I'm the liaison. Oh, new to me.
Yes?
I'll table that.
Okay, all right. This is a question for Jennifer and Ryan. We've had some discussion about tonight, about things that we would like to see as more information. The video will have a list of those particular items. Is there anything else that we should be adding to that list? And that's actually for the rest of the committee, because that's basically a longer list of we want to look at this. Anything else?
I think the answer, I think I'd say if there are things that you want to see, I would recommend that maybe you would have the Finance Committee submit those questions to the chair, and the chair can then provide that to us, and we can try to be responsive to you at your next meeting on Thursday.
Does that sound like a plan to everyone? We can defer voting on this and compile our questions. I'd be happy to take, if everybody wants to shoot me an individual email with questions they'd like to see answered, I'll put it together and send it through, and we'll ask BD to respond next week to supplement the presentation to us. We'll just defer our vote. And that means we only have 3 articles left to think about next week, all of which will have a little more information about presented to us at our meeting on March 18th. I just want to get a sense of the room. Is everybody comfortable proceeding that way?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm seeing nods. Pat, Brian, does that make sense to you as an approach?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Okay, so that's, we don't have any minutes to review, but we can recap our action items, which are that we'll put together an information request for BD, and we'll turn it quickly so that they have a chance to respond. And we will follow up to make sure we're going to get the additional information we need on Articles 11 and 12. And we can adjourn this meeting then, and we can see.
Carlin wanted a few minutes, right? A minute to remind people about their write-ups.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for reminding me of that. I will let Carlin do that, and then we'll adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Lindsay. I appreciate that.
Oh, Carmen?
Yes.
Did you have a comment?
Thank you. I just wanted to add to my remarks about the consent calendar earlier that I told you my general expectation with respect to what I would propose out of the enterprise funds for inclusion on the consent calendar. But I just wanted to remind everybody that 2 of the prerequisites for inclusion of any article on the consent calendar is that the article have affirmative recommendation for affirmative action by the Finance Committee if it's within its purview, and also by the Select Board.
Yeah.
So just know that if you haven't yet made a decision, it's not going on the consent calendar. It'll be there for you to offer your recommendation at town meeting.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Down.
Okay. Carlin?
Thank you. All right, this is just a reminder that we need write-ups for the Finance Committee report. For Peggy, Articles 10 and 26, Don, Articles 11 and 40, and yes, I know we haven't voted on 11 yet. Brian, Articles 17, 7, and 8. Gerard, 6 and 12, and yes, I know we haven't done 12 yet. Kathy, Articles 9 and 12. John, Articles 50 and 48. Carlin, I think I've done 24. I have to do 29, 41, 42, and 47. And yeah, John, we're deferring 48 till later, so yours isn't due quite yet. Suresh, Article 39, I will cover that if Suresh doesn't get to it. And Paul, Articles 45, 44, 45, and 46. Please send them to me, and you have a template. If you need the template again, please let me know. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, I think our business is concluded for the night, and I am going to adjourn the meeting. I don't think there's a need for a vote, and I don't think there will be any objections. So, good night, everybody. The usual time, 6:30, next Thursday.
Okay, adjourned at